Odell, you're good?
She's more, she's got it.
You're on legal documents, I guess. That's about it.
I don't want to make you
It's a
uncomfortable
prayer,
at
I'm
all.
not uncomfortable at all.
No, Mayor, we want her to be a little uncomfortable. She played us the whole time in planning commission.
You guys are so
Everybody
much better
set?
at it.
I doubt it.
Good evening, everyone. We'd encourage you all to silence your phones, please. We welcome you to this regularly scheduled meeting of the Ivins City Council held this Thursday evening, March 3rd, 2022. We'd like to begin by recognizing that we have all of our council members here, thus we can conduct the business of this evening. We are resuming a Zoom link. Hopefully that's going to function properly this evening, but this meeting will be available by Zoom and will also be available to watch on YouTube ultimately. We're going to begin with a flag salute and invocation. We'll be led in that by Councilmember Murphy. We'd ask you all please to stand who are here.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity to come before you this evening. We thank you for this beautiful place in which we're benefited to live. We thank you for the citizens of this place we live in. We also ask you to please watch over those that protect and serve us, our police, our fire, our military. We ask you to guide us in our discussions tonight, that we may have good discussions and that we make sound decisions that benefit this community. And we ask this in your name, Jesus Christ.
Amen.
Thank you. I'll now poll the council to determine if we have any conflicts of interest based on this evening's agenda, beginning with Councilmember Anderson,
No.
Councilmember Murphy,
No conflicts.
Councilmember Johnson,
No conflicts.
Councilmember Mayer,
No
and
conflicts.
Councilmember Scott.
No conflicts.
Thank you, and I have no conflicts. We're going to begin with our reports, presentations, and appointments. Our first item is a concept plan report for crossings at Red Desert subdivision located approximately 800 South in Maine. VE Management and Investment Company LC owner and Dave Lynn applicant. Mike?
Yes, so this is 82 lots on 10 acres. It's an RM7 zone with an R2-6 buffer zone. Looks like it was buffering the property to the east. They're asking for, well, there's also a nightly rental overlay. So the proposed density and use is consistent with the general plan for this subdivision.
Council, any questions? We lost our screens here. Not able to look at it right now.
I think you got him back.
We can see Mike now.
Yeah.
And Alan.
Okay, let's concept plan, so we'll be seeing much more of this. Thank you, Mike.
Okay.
Any questions for Mike, council? All right, we're going to jump to our department reports, beginning with Parks and Recreation. You know what, I'm going to shift gears here. We've got Brock Jacobson here, city manager for Santa Clara, who is going to introduce an important person in the lives of Ivins residents, our new fire chief. Thanks, Brock, for being here.
Thank you for having me tonight. I'm happy to be here to introduce our new fire chief of the Santa Clara Ivins Fire Department. That is Andrew Parker. He's here with us tonight. Andrew just started on Monday, but Andrew comes from Southern California. He grew up in Rancho Cucamonga. Upon graduating from high school, he spent 3 years with the LA Fire Department and then the last 16 years with Rancho Cucamonga. So he's got an extensive history and background. Fire, he's also a paramedic, so fits in with our EMS and ambulance service. I moved his family to the St. George area the first of the calendar year, first part of January, moved here. So he was here and he was commuting back to Rancho Cucamonga. I think he was working 5 days on and 8 days off, if I remember correctly. And so he's happy to have found a job here, and we're excited to have him. I said it's exciting to have him with the department to lead it, to take it to a new level. And, there's a lot of room for growth within the fire department, and so we're excited to have him, and I will let him share anything else. You guys have any questions for him? And so, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good to see everybody. Did you want the department update?
Yeah, let's get you to the mic so we get it recorded, but
All right, good evening. So it's been a busy first week. It's been exciting to kind of make the rounds. Met Mr. Flowers from PD, was able to have lunch with him, and that was a pretty exciting time. Just to kind of see what's happening with PD, trying to be involved with our police as well and be unified in our message and our response. So I'll provide the department update at this point. So emergency response, again, been here 4 days, lots happened, been able to do analysis, kind of see what response delivery that we're providing. So if those folks that don't know, the Rachel station is currently the only staffed station with our medic and our rescue. So they're providing emergency response. However, here at the Ivins station, just below City Hall, we've established basically headquarters for administration. That way we can work out of those offices, providing just office space for us. So I'm up there, I usually get there about 6:30. Throughout the day, obviously make my way down to Santa Clara, but back up. So we're trying to provide a presence in that building and make it useful. Tonight, every Thursday night, we have our training. So folks are going to be over there tonight doing firefighter training. Emergency response, so we like to break it down kind of into our organizational framework. It might take a little bit of time, but I think it's a thorough presentation. So emergency response, we're running about 4 to 5 calls per day. Sometimes we have drawdown, which means there's 2 calls that happen. So Medic 32 is backing up our medic at this time. So we did have an illegal burn that took place north of us here. We will be in the burn season, but just remember we should go through Washington County to get a burn permit. So it was mitigated without incident. We did do our wildland. We're prepping for the wildland season. Obviously, Kayenta has some interface, we call it, with brush around the homes. So folks are doing their pack tests, getting ready for that. That certifies them physically, they're fit to respond on brush fires. Station maintenance and apparatus, we're kind of doing, I'm trying to get an inventory of our station, kind of the status of it, roofs and so on and so forth, and our rigs as well. But we are working with city yards to do some maintenance. Some things have changed, so we will be doing some outsourcing for maintenance through local vendors, but we're going to probably work with St. George Fire, try to find a good common vendor that does equipment maintenance for us. Organizational framework right now, we're kind of reclassifying some things, getting a little bit more efficient, budget, positions, and deployment models. That means potentially coming up here, we're going to hire, we'll fly the flyer pretty soon for firefighter paramedic. It's going to be a full-time position. And what that's going to do for us is provide a 3-person staffed fire engine. So engine 32 will now be responding all risk. They'll also staff a brush engine. Those calls come in, they can go up and fight brush fires. And we'll have the medic running as well. So that's what we'll be doing shortly within the next 12 months. We will be sending out a flyer, hopefully nationally, is the goal, to try to get a larger span of applicants qualified to fill that firefighter paramedic role. So prevention risk reduction, we did meet with CERT. We will be doing a great shakeout here in the great city of Ivins, April 21st. It's 6 to 8:30 p.m. and that will be coordinated. We had our first breakout meeting with Mayor Hart was there, of course. I learned a lot about the call boxes. It seems like a very good system. So we'll be conducting that April 21st. There's still more planning to go for that. We did do with prevention, working with Mike and Fred on plan checking. We had Black Desert Resort came through our technical review, so we're working with them on their design and fire prevention, making sure everything's solid and safe for those that come and visit. So pretty big assemblies, 600 occupants in some of the facilities, so pretty neat stuff for me from the outside looking in. It's going to be a neat resort. They also provided one of our captains, he provides inspection, but he did a plan check for a home up in Cayenta. So the square footage was roughly 5,000 square feet, large home. So right now we're working with those that don't know or those that live up there, the long driveways. We're trying to come up with solutions to provide maybe a standpipe or some type of more effective hose deployment so we can get hose up into the residence. Because we typically can't drive on a long driveway like that. It'll damage it with a 40,000-pound apparatus. So we're working with Mike and Fred in planning and coming up with solutions for that. Additionally, we're working with Fred's designed a software we can do remotely. We can plan check, fire prevention plan checks remotely, so we don't have to come up to the office. They can get it quicker. We'll be having a training with them next week. In Santa Clara, we did have an arson issue at Goobler Park, which is on the border, and typically these, we're working in conjunction. I was there with Rich down at PD today discussing that investigation, but it's currently under investigation. So typically those can venture outside of city boundaries often. So we're working hard on that. Public education, community relations. So we do have, Monday we have a tactical response. So any active shooting scenario that would occur potentially at the schools, we're planning and prepping for that. So we're in the initial phase of that, working with police coming up with a plan to treat patients rapidly. So I'm sure everybody's aware nationally on those incidents, so we're developing a plan for that. We do have the Ironman, May 7th, so we're working with PD on that. That's going to be exciting, the World Championships. Usually I guess it's in Hawaii, right? So here in the city of Ivins is going to be pretty neat. We'll be helping PD, staffing some rigs, doing some traffic control for that. Last thing, we do have a movie shoot that's occurring March 10th on Tuacan Drive and Red Hills Parkway. So that'll be occurring potentially from 0700 to 7 p.m. at night. So that's our update. Any questions from council or the public?
Council?
Welcome.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you.
So you moved first and then got the job. That's
Yes, sir.
interesting approach.
Step of faith,
So-
yeah. It was definitely a step of faith for us, so, but it worked out.
Oh, great, yes, it did. We're pleased to have you on board. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Mayor.
Bob? Okay then, Mr. Flowers.
It's Andrew, not Andrew.
I'm really excited to work with our new fire chief. I was sitting there talking to him, and it's really exciting. Some good partnerships, and we did have lunch the other day, and some of the things that we can learn a lot from him, and I'm looking forward to working with him a lot. Good choice there, right? Our report, he covered a lot of my stuff. Actually, we're supporting a lot of things and doing, with the fire folks, and so I won't bore you with that. I did submit something electronically. The arson he's talking about, John Ward identified suspects today, so that's really good. And we also think that they're involved in a couple others. So we're checking. A lot of kids like to do now, they like to, film their criminal acts, put them out there, so we're checking some things there. So, but we feel good about that. About, I don't know if you remember, a few years ago, we had some really major thefts at a couple of our construction sites. And we got a call from Colorado here this week, and our detectives are now working on that. We think we've identified a ring that not only hit us, they hit the medical school. Lance, you've been hit. You were hit recently, and a couple of things. So we think those are hard. Unless you have property show up and you have vehicles you can identify to match up, the tracks and stuff, they're really hard to do. But we think we may draw some conclusion on that. We're still working with the Colorado authorities. I actually thought it was a little closer to home, but it looks like these individuals travel around and do this. There's a group of 8 of them, fairly sophisticated, and they hit us for over $1 million, just our small community, which we had major construction, and that's sort of what they look like. We're feeling good about that. We just received our numbers for the year. We're looking really good. What I would like to do is I'm going to get with Dell probably within the next couple of weeks. We have a meeting next week. We're bringing the staff together. I'd like to see if you could be there also, where we're going to talk about our strategies, and then we'll meet with Dell and come back and present them to you in more of a report talk about our crime stats. What we're going to recommend that we do, we'll need some support on that. We actually looked back when we did this about it. Well, we've looked at it every year, but 2 years ago we were right on track with our predictions. So our vandalisms are up. Some of our investigations, involving violence are up. But sometimes I think it's a little bit of tracking also. Time's up?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Bob.
Okay.
Fire chief
It's
took
been
too
great
long.
being here with you tonight, and that is Mr. Flowers. That to be known. So I will come back with that, with those, and I'll actually provide it to you individually once I run it through Dale and the mayor and get those to you. I think it's a really good story for both us and Santa Clara, frankly. So, any questions?
So in your written report, it sounded like a high-speed chase all the way to Beaver Dam?
Yeah, we've been reluctant to talk about that case, and just
Oh, okay.
in brief, only because it wasn't our case, but it is coming to some conclusion. It was one that actually ended in Beaver Dam, so it was being investigated by Mojave County. I got many requests on information about that because it was an active investigation involving a shooting, which, we didn't report also that we were involved in the pursuit. 2 of our officers were actually shot at in the pursuit right out here about 10 yards from my home. It was kind of a spooky thing. But it was a pursuit involving an individual that we had been watching with other agencies, mainly City of Washington and City of St. George. And the pursuit started south by Bloomington Hills, came up the freeway, came up Dixie Downs and through Santa Clara. When they went by me, they were, I don't know, Rock, I don't know, what's the fastest speed you could possibly go on that street? Yeah, and it was an amazing thing. I will have to say that I was, when you have these incidents go down, you watch radio discipline and you listen and you think, man, does that really happen here? Pursuit involving a kidnapping of a child. This individual actually holding a gun to the child's head as he was driving and getting out of the car. And to listen to our officers, the discipline and the decision-making, I got to tell you, I was extremely proud. It's, it's one thing to talk about it, but it's a whole other thing to get involved. And the officers down there in Beaver Dam, what they had to go through, some major things. So, not like Chicago, but it is what it was something that was pretty amazing to us, and our folks did really well. We just completed our post-investigation reviews of the pursuit and things like that. Our part, because we had the crime scene out here, we actually went up and down the highway finding the rounds that were shot, and we turned that over to Mojave County. So they've interviewed all of us, and things are going pretty well. So, yeah, and I have to tell you, the training and the equipment were provided by the city, and the things that we're able to have, the officers' vests and things, it pays off. It does pay off. So anyway, marvelous work by all of them. And I will report back on the major cases when we're able to actually make the arrests. Report back to you on those. So,
Thank you, Bob. Council, any other questions?
okay.
Appreciate
thank
you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
I would just note that we've lost the signal to your monitors, much like what happened in Planning Commission this week. So if you want to see without turning around what is being projected or what the attachments are, you can use your iPads, go to the Ivins website, pull up the agenda. Mike's is,
No, I'm okay.
oh, okay.
Or you can share my phone.
And then you'll be able
We
to,
can all look at
you'll
Jenny's
just have to
monitor.
look at them on your own, because we can't get the monitors to work.
Ours are working. Our end works, okay, got it. We can all come back here.
We can make the decisions.
That's it. We're quorum.
This building is technologically far more complex than our previous building, and they're still working the bugs out.
Lots of bugs.
Benny, welcome. Thanks for waiting for your turn.
No problem. I always like listening to Bob's stuff. His stuff is exciting. So scary, but exciting. So, but you got the report electronically. Just a couple of things that are coming up. Red Mountain 50, 5K and 30K and Dirty Hurdy are this Saturday. So I think they might still let you sign up if you want to do that. No?
No.
Okay, whatever. Got things, in the future, we've got baseball registrations going on, the Hog and Jog coming up in April, Easter egg hunt in April, geology workshop at the end of the month. That'll be here. Hopefully we can get all the glitches worked out of the system so we can use the screen and everything for that. Bingo in the park will return in April, community yard sale in April. So just some things that we're looking forward to as we go forward. We only had, well, 2 is enough, but we had 2 burials in the cemetery this month, in the month of February. And I did put vandalism was better than last month, but the day after I sent that, somebody went in and busted up one of the bathrooms a little bit. But the officers, I think, Bob was telling me today, they think they've got them narrowed down who they were, probably the same ones that he was talking about that tried to set a fire in Santa Clara. So we have excellent police and excellent fire. The fire actually helped us today take a flag down that was hooked up at the top of the flagpole. So we don't have anything that reaches it, but they did come and help us, so that was really appreciated. What I was asked to report about was pickleball. I guess I'm going to tell you what we do have. Most of you know what we do have already. We, a number of years ago, I was trying to even remember when it was, we didn't have anything, so we put in some recreational courts down at Unity Park on one of the basketball courts. We had one of our local welders put together a couple of nets so that we could move them in and out so that the basketball courts could remain basketball courts, but also be used as that. They are not official size courts. Who knew there was a difference between what's acceptable on a basketball court? You can have a 2% slope on a basketball court, but on pickleball, you can only have 0.883 to 1%. So it's not that much, but the ball does roll away on you. But they are mainly recreational courts. It's a little, like I said, if the senior games wanted to play games on those, they would not be able to do it because they're just not, professional, I guess, or regulation. But they're a little close together, so there's some issues if somebody was to get in there and get really out of hand. The courts are close together, but I think probably for 6 or 7 years, I think they've been enjoyed as a place to do it. In late 2017 and early 2018, we finished the pickleball courts down at Desert Rose, and they are up to code and up to regulation, and so haven't had any real issues down there. Looks like we're about ready to replace the nets. They kind of get a pounding a little bit, even though that ball's pretty light. It does kind of pack a wallop. But those are the things that we have that are public court. There are other courts in Ivins that are not public courts, but there are a number of them. Pickleball is something that's always been on our radar for the last 10 or 15 years. And what our plan has been is when we build parks like Desert Rose, that we would include pickleball courts. We'd have that same type of a footprint that includes, an open space to play, a playground, a pavilion, a bathroom, pickleball courts, and a walking place. So that we kind of meet a lot of needs in one small space. Desert Rose is about just a little over 2 acres. So that's probably what our next ones will be. We come to a point right now where we don't really have any property that we own that we have planned to build a park on yet. The next one we're looking at would be south of the highway, down below Riders. I've talked to Lance a little bit about it, but they're not to a point where we can discuss where that property may be, something that we'll have to purchase, or whatever the agreement is. Probably will contain a detention basin like Desert Rose does also. But at this point, if we were to build another park, we've got to work with developers, or we have to find something in the location we want. and purchase it outright. And right now, it's a little pricey when we try to purchase land. But that's kind of where we are. There is a couple of regular, just smaller parks like that we're looking at, and most of these will probably occur in the next 2 to 10 years. Each of those will have 2 courts on them, not likely lighted. Generally, in a neighborhood park, we try not to put lights in those. The community park that will be is planned for the property that we hope to obtain from the BLM is slated to contain probably 4 to 8 pickleball courts down there, and in that location probably could be lighted. So that's our future plan for them. I noticed there was a plan that was proposed to put 4 courts on on the soccer field that's immediately west of the tennis courts in Unity Park. I'm not a big fan of that. We'd have limited space to do that. It's about 280 feet long, which is long enough and just barely wide enough to actually play a regulation soccer game on. We can play smaller. We do play short-sided. We play, younger kids on it. But adding a pickleball court of that size to there would probably eliminate someplace between 25 and 30% of that field, which would impact a lot of things we do, not only soccer. We have a lot of running events that we do out there, and most everything is in that area. So it isn't my first choice of places to be. In fact, the only place that we own property is the detention basin down in the Haven. And so I know that wasn't what the plan was for that. It is a detention basin, what it was first. When we spoke with them, we told them that it would be grass and that it would be used for overflow, particularly in soccer, or for just free play for families and people. So I don't know if it would be welcome in that area, but that's something we could address. That spot is there and would accommodate what we're looking at here for 4 courts. Another thing I mentioned in the report is we do have a sand volleyball court over in Red Rock Park that we've been looking at. Maybe we could turn that into 1 pickleball court down there, which is about all it could handle down in that park. There's not much parking, and it would just serve the neighborhood, kind of like Desert Rose does also. But we were thinking maybe around $25,000 we could do that, but based on materials and things that we'd have to do, it looks like it'll be much closer to 50. So that's just kind of what we're looking at. By the way, we have upgraded the Unity Park nets so far. I was able to find some really nice nets that look and stay in a condition where they're at the right height and right everything, and they've so far been really nice. We did have a couple of I guess I can call them knot-headed skateboarders decide that when they got there, they decided that they wanted to grind on those things very first day. And so fortunately, it doesn't move much, and they got frustrated and haven't been back. So hopefully that will continue to be the case. We do also plan, a lot of the complaints that I've heard down there is there is such a slope in the park. When the ball goes off the pickleball court, it hits that sidewalk and goes all the way down to the baseball fields. So we were looking at putting some fencing along the east border and the south border to at least stop that from happening, so balls would hit it and remain there. And it wouldn't damage what we do with basketball at all on the basketball courts. I did happen to have a friend who happens to be building a park for St. George City right now, and it happens to be a four complex. They'll have four pickleball courts in there, and they are lighted. And so the numbers that I presented to you were some that he just did from his bid tabulation sheets. And so it looks like probably just to build the courts of that size, and that includes lights. Pretty much anywhere you do it, it's going to be right around $250,000. It depends also, depending on what else we have to do on the site. The pickleball courts, if they were down in the detention basin, we'd have some extra work to do with retaining walls to put in a ADA accessible sidewalk down into the courts. So there'd be some extra cost there. I don't know what those amounts would be at this point. The lights we have at Unity Park are from Musco Lighting. I like them. They give us a lot of control. They have one of the best light control systems that they have. And I did ask them to give me the one in the St. George City is not Musco. So if we went with the Musco Lighting, they told me that their pricing for that court would be between $61,000 and $69,000. So that would increase that cost to about $276,000 for just that basic court that we would be considering.
So Benny, the petition had a number of names, a long list. Do you agree then that our lack of pickleball facilities is maybe the greatest deficiency we have in our parks and recreation facilities?
Depends on who you talk to. and that's very true. If you talk to tennis people, we need more tennis. If you talk to baseball people, we need more baseball. If you talk to skateboarders, we need more skate parks, and so they skate other places. So it just depends. I know I've looked at different. St. George is kind of an anomaly. They provide a lot of courts in St. George. I don't know how many there are. There's, I think, 24 out in Little Valley that are professional courts, and I know they redid Vernon Worthen, and I don't know exactly how many. There was supposed to end up at about 18 down there. I don't know how many they actually have. So there's a lot of courts there. But as I looked a little bit at what other cities have, I found a chart that was in an article, and it just went down cities who have pickleball, what other cities are providing for pickleball per 20,000 residents, and Seattle provides 3 courts per 20,000 residents. And there was a little caveat with that because there was some guy made a comment that he says most of the courts in Seattle are crap. Excuse my French, but he said they're things that they found a parking lot, put up some nets, and drew some lines on the ground. So he says that was not there. But I looked at some of the other cities. City of Henderson, Nevada, providing 1.5 courts per 20,000 residents. Scottsdale, Arizona, 1.5 courts per 20,000 residents. So based on what other people are doing, we're providing 2 for less than 10,000 and a recreational set. So technically 4 places to play in Ivins City for less than 10,000 residents. And when you add Santa Clara to it, they have at least 6. So that gives us 10 for a population of 20,000 residents. So I like pickleball. I don't mind what it is. I mean, that would just be that would be a choice that you would have to make. Normally it is. The process that we go through is, it's in our master plan. We move forward just like we were planning with the other parks to move those along. So it'd just be whatever the council would like to do. I mean, we will eventually have more courts, but it will be a couple of years before that happens.
So the percentage of our population that are retirees and in an age group where pickleball is one of the preferred activities, that might skew that some.
A little bit, probably.
But my follow-up question has to do with that detention basin. So typically you'll see grass in a soccer field because it could fill up with 2 or 3 feet of water in some major event. And I don't know if pickleball courts survive that with that much water over a short period of time or not.
I don't see that would be an issue down in there. I talked to Chuck. Was Chuck still here? I mentioned it to Chuck, and he didn't seem to have any issues with that being we'd just have to come in and clean them off just like we would anything else after a flood event.
Because if those were lit, the fact that it's depressed actually improves, improves the
Yeah.
lighting thing because we keep the fixtures down low. But I
Yeah,
mean,
it-
that's intriguing to me, the idea of that. Are you using it for anything else now?
Ivins Soccer uses it,
Oh,
but I asked Casey, you know, we could handle it, if it wasn't there, we could, you know, he could squeeze back in to some space over at Unity Park probably. But I don't know what kind of resistance you would get from the neighborhood
Yes.
down there, especially if it was lighted.
right. Thank you.
Okay.
Let's see, did I see David? Planning Commission report, please.
Mayor, council. So this week, we reviewed the concept plan that you guys were reviewing just earlier. Just reviewed it, obviously, nothing to go forward with that. And then we discussed and considered approval for Indigo Trails Phase 1I and Indigo Trails Phase 2B. Everything was in check as far as we could tell, so we did recommend that to be brought to you guys for consideration for approval. We had a short discussion on the table of uses that we've been working on. Mostly some clarification that, I don't know if Dale will go over that with you later, but mostly some clarification on the alcohol bar versus restaurant and how that'll all work out. So I think that got cleaned up. And then a little bit with the car wash issues. So we kind of reviewed that and got some information on that. And then we went into the zoning and general plan amendments. And we kind of end up having a discussion on this because multiple of the commissioners, I don't think, understood where our plan was going based on, we felt like our original assignment is that we were actually looking to change zoning as well as the actual, planning map. And so we started to get a little confusion on that. And so we ended up straightening that out, which helped us narrow down what we're doing a little better. So I thought our assignment was different, or many of us did, and now we understand the assignment a little better, shall we say?
One map at a time.
Yeah, and so now that we've kind of narrowed that down, so we've got some good discussion going on that, and I think we'll have that the map for the land use wrapped up probably in the next, I think, pretty close. What's that?
2 years.
2 years, next 2 years. Listen to him. That was it for us for this week. It was a short one.
Thank you. Council, any questions? Appreciate you being here, David.
Yep,
Thank you.
thank you.
I have no citizen comment forms before me. If somebody came here intending to make a comment, there's a form that must be filled out. Okay, seeing none. We're going to move to our public hearing and action items, beginning with item 4A on the agenda.
That was it for us for this week. It was a short one.
Thank you. Council, any questions? Appreciate you being here, David.
Yep, thank you.
I have no citizen comment. Okay, if someone came here with the intent of making a citizen comment, which is a request for a future agenda item, it's not simply to stand and say, I don't like the pothole in the street sort of thing. That's an administrative thing. Beginning with item 4A on the agenda.
That was it for us.
You may have a request over here for a future agenda item.
Okay.
Somebody wanted to make, but didn't know
I have
how.
no citizen comment. Okay,
There we go. Yeah, that was on stereo or something.
Make it a little more confusing.
Little tape delay. Oh, there it goes back on.
Mayor, you may want to re-clarify that she didn't her answer where we could hear it because of all the noise.
Ma'am, this will be a public hearing, and so you'll be able to make your comments as part of that. So this is not for a future agenda item.
Okay.
It'll be tonight.
So could you hear an answer to your question?
I didn't hear a specific answer, and it'd be nice to know the differentiation between what you just said to her and what the general comments are. Like, when we fill out the form and we don't fill out the form.
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Dave.
The form is to request a future agenda item. This woman here would like to make comments regarding a public hearing that is scheduled for tonight. The item for pickleball courts is not open for public comment tonight, but it will become part of a budget discussion. And through that budget process, as we go through the budget process, there will be a public hearing on the budget eventually. That's some months off, a couple of months off, but it really is a budget item, and they've heard a report. They could request that it be placed as an agenda item for discussion, but that they'd have to indicate whether or not they want to take public comment on that. So I'd leave it to you, Mayor, if you want a future agenda item. It's part of an agenda.
Yeah, as a new member of the community, it would be nice to know the criteria for different things, because it says you guys want people to show up, but then when we do, I feel shut down right now. So, and I could have prepped several weeks ago had I known what the rules were, and I don't see those on the website. And so maybe they're not, maybe they are there, and I don't know, but the specific criteria would be very helpful versus just the pickleball example and the steering for tonight.
So we're like all other cities. Our public meetings, these city council meetings are sort of formal. And so the public's opportunity to make comment is during public hearings. And sometimes we'll invite someone up who has some insight or information to provide to the council as they deliberate on something. But ordinarily, we don't carry on the kind of conversation that you and I are right now in this meeting. A number of things that our residents are concerned about really are administrative related. So a concern about pickleball would normally go to our Parks and Recreation Director, whom you just heard from. Others come directly to Dale, our city manager. But there are times where someone observes something in the city that they believe an ordinance is impacting incorrectly, and that's the time to come and file the form and stand and recommend to the council that they consider opening up a portion of our ordinances to review specifically for a problem that may exist out there that the council is not particularly aware of. Okay?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I would indicate, though, that you are always free to email and contact your elected officials individually, or they can have some contact with you outside of a formal meeting. And so you can go to the Ivins website and you can access them through emails. You could ask that you could give your number and ask that they give you a call, and usually they're very open to do that.
And just one follow-up, because we have a number of issues on our plate right now that are quite impactful across the entire city, you're going to see us inviting the community to come to more informal types of meetings, open houses, where we can discuss things like the general plan and the fact that we're going through a process of revising that now, and that's impactful to all of our residents. And so, and those are the kinds of environments where we can just talk to each other and take questions and try and provide answers and so forth and just have a discussion. But I've sat in your seat. I know how frustrating it is to be out there with something important to say and no means to say it, but thank you. Okay. We're going to move on then to our first public hearing this evening. The council will conduct a public hearing on the Planning Commission's recommendation on a concurrent land use amendment from LDR, which is low-density residential, to HDR, which is high-density residential, and a zone amendment from RA-1, residential agricultural minimum lot size 1 acre, to R-TH, which is townhomes, rather than the R-M residential multifamily as requested by the applicant owner. On approximately 3.91 acres, Blue Cactus Development Limited owner, Bill Papadopoulos, is the applicant. So Dale, are you starting us out on this, or Mike?
I can introduce it quickly, because some of the attachments, I could not open on my computer. Carrie could not open on her computer. Either we don't have the software, or it says it's too complex to open. But I think they had to do with land use and the zoning as it currently stands and what is proposed. That's a fairly simple concept. There is this booklet here, which Cade, you are projecting a black screen with your name on right now. If I could show the attachment, I don't know what that does to Zoom. But if we go, so that one's even having a little trouble. Yeah, let's see if we can, but it's not, okay, here we go. If we go to some of these maps that are in the back of this proposal, we'll see a map, and you'll see the roundabout, and up on this is north, to viewing it to your right is east, so northeast of the roundabout you see on the screen is a almost triangular piece of property that is in green. That property, the land use is currently low-density residential. They are asking that it be changed to high-density residential. The zoning is currently RA1, meaning 1 acre lots. The applicant requested multifamily zoning, and the Planning Commission recommended townhome zoning. I know the applicant is here with a couple of other people to do a presentation and answer questions about this property and how it can be, what their proposed use is. But the land use and the zoning concept is actually pretty simple. I will make one correction so that it's not a misunderstanding. Directly to the south, across the highway, Visionary Homes, which shows that it's community commercial. It's actually a mixed-use zone, which is one use is community commercial, another use is residential, and so it's a mixed-use product which is going to have townhome use on it. So with that clarification, I don't know if Mike has something further to add on it or not.
So the planning commission made the recommendation. It was a vote 4-1, with one of the commissioners believing that it should stay medium in density.
Thank you. I think because we have the developer or representative of the developer here, it's okay with everyone else. We might be able to clarify some of the things that might show up as questions or concerns by having you give us a brief introduction to this yourself, explaining what you're trying to accomplish here, and then we'll go to other residents.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members, City Manager and Recorder. Matt Liu, American Land Consulting, representing the owner and developer of this piece of property, Mr. Bill Papanicholas. What our proposal is similar to what our neighbors to the east might be, and even maybe our neighbors to the south, without the commercial zone there. What we're trying to do, what we're trying to propose, is an opportunity to maybe help identify options for people to live here in this amazing city of Ivins. If you look at some of the data that's recently posted as of last month in February, the average home in Ivins is somewhere around $540,000. Makes it kind of tough for those that, whether it's your school teacher or whether it's your entry police officer that maybe earns a wage of, $34,000, $35,000, or $36,000 a year. Definitely is going to have to be a two-income family to afford homes or living opportunities here in this city of Ivins. So our proposal is to look at this and hopefully support the recommendation of the Planning Commission, and also allowing us to work with staff on some designs that makes sense, that might be a little bit creative. We recognize that this is the first step of a process that will come before you. We will bring this, if again there is support this evening, we will present the layout, the product, the elevations, the site plan. So we will be doing that while working with staff and be before you at least another 2 times before the ultimate approval, hopeful approval of this project. So this is the first step with the zone change, and it's interesting, with cities and with master plans, quite a few times in various cities, they do what is called placeholder zones, not knowing what could be there. So they'll either do a blanket zone in various areas in the city, or a certain zone that is kind of a comfortable zone, but it's kind of serves as placeholders until there might be some other opportunities to look at it a little bit differently. I believe that this is one of those situations with the current zone that we have. There's always concern, obviously, when you're talking about higher densities, you're talking about maybe, can't say affordable anymore, maybe attainable, housing units, with everything else that goes with that. But our hope is that we have the opportunity to work, again, with staff. We are currently working with your public works folks on the right-of-ways off of 91, as well as the roundabout design there. Obviously, you can see the hash color that kind of affects this property. But again, we are, as far as we're talking to the owner, very open to working with staff and working with elected officials and Planning Commission to do something amazing, do something to be proud of. Obviously, there are some concerns with various designs nearby, possibly our neighbors to the east. We hope to bring something forward that matches the Ivins city's look and feel, possibly flat roofs, some different designs there, but that kind of gets more into the next several phases of this process. Again, this evening, we're just looking at your consideration on Planning Commission's recommendation and giving us the opportunity to do some creative designs to make this product something that we all feel good about. Again, the owner of this property, Mr. Papa Nicholas, has owned this property for 10 years. He's a Ivins resident. He's not a corporate guy coming in and doing certain things. He considers this as a legacy project for him, being a part of this community. And obviously, he's proud of his residency here at Ivins City, and he just wants to maintain that relationship with the community. Again, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions or even sit and allow the good residents of Ivins to stand and present, their views and their concerns, and possibly address that maybe at the end of the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right, so this is an open public hearing. We'd invite anyone who wishes to make a comment on this specific agenda item to come forward. We'd ask you to state your name as you begin your comment, please.
My name is Barb Paredes, and I am a resident here of 17 years of Ivins. Thank you, Mayor, City Council, and City Manager for allowing me to speak. The concern with high density, I take from your own newsletter from March. And I'm not going to quote it word for word, because I'm sure you've all read it. It's always an excellent document. But let's start with Highway 91 is heavily used, and often when there's construction on the gorge, it causes long delays. Now, these deficiencies will be rectified in the new design, but that's not done yet. And we're talking more high density, where we already have some. The next paragraph talks about the water situation. The system is long overdue. It will be in 5 phases, 15 years. It's not done yet. The building of the reservoirs to help us with the water situation. Absolutely, I agree with all of these, but that's not done yet, and we're talking more high density. The garbage situation, I only brought 3 copies, and Mayor, you can distribute these as you wish.
Thank you.
My husband and I love volunteering in this community, and we frequently go out and pick up the garbage along 91 from our home and then towards the Paiute Reservation. I can't keep up with it anymore. And so we've already brought more high density, not saying that that is the culprit for all of it. But the garbage is starting to look in that corridor like it does when you leave Vegas and you're coming towards St. George, where there's all that debris and stuff. My question is, are we putting the cart before the horse? With more high density, the infrastructure is not necessarily there. And what are we going to do about that? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any others?
Good evening, everyone. You've seen me before. I'm Lila Gaylord. I live in Shadow Canyons. I want to support Barbara Pridey's concerns, and we've discussed it at length. I know that there's several different reasons why we're looking at multifamily or townhomes, because there's a lot of folks that can't afford regular homes, single family, and to afford them to buy properties in these areas. However, some of the construction that has taken place in Ivins that started out as affordable housing ended up being not affordable. Some of the resales are in the 400,000s, 500,000s for these homes that were originally built for 200 to 39,000 to 259,000. So they changed. And to build something that you're going to put families in on a roundabout that could be dangerous because it's a fast highway is something to reconsider. One of the construction projects that are built on 91 doesn't even exit onto 91 because of the high high traffic use. It exits out to a street that exits out onto 200 West. So I guess what I'm saying is for the council to consider that possibly, I had heard that you were putting a moratorium on zoning changes, that maybe you consider continuing with the possibility of having a moratorium on these changes until all the issues that Barbara brought up, that you've listed in your newsletter, which are excellent, the water issue, the affordability of the homes, the locations, the 91 being high traffic, all of these things that you might wait until some of these things have been completed till you start approving zoning changes in an area that's already overrun. I know we don't have a lot of open land left in Ivins, but all the open land that might be left in Ivins is along 91, which is high traffic, and a safety issue for probably everybody that tries to cross the street move in and out of their areas. That's all I'm asking. Reconsider and think about the zoning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Mark Burry. I live at 343 West Foster Lane. If you look at the subject property, Foster Lane is the northern boundary. My house is right on that property. It's 10 feet from my house to my wall. And right now, the condos to the east are 2-story. If my house was there, they'd be looking right down into my bedroom and my living room. If, on a personal note, this is just personal, if you build townhomes across that northern border, it'll be like a block wall, 2 stories high, and we'll have no view, and it'll totally obliterate the sun coming into our house. That's a small thing, but if you're living there and you bought that house thinking that there was only going to be 3 or 4 houses below you, it's a huge difference.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. So my name is Lisa Gans, and I am also a resident in Ivins here. And you've probably seen my letters that I've sent to you guys, several letters in reference to requesting a pause on any of the zone changes until we have an opportunity to get input or provide input on the general plan and also the land use in the zones. So I'm here to basically put that request in again. I think we need community alignment on any type of zone change, and we have the general plan that is supposed to be driving that decision. But also, I know Mike's on next door a lot, and I don't know if you guys ever just kind of monitor that, but there's been a lot of recent discussion about zoning and the high density and all the building that's going on. So I think that the consensus, at least on my assessment from just next door, is that, you know, a lot of the people and the consensus is to, you know, try to protect as much open space and keep the high density down. And that is one of the main reasons why in my letter that I sent to you guys was to let's do a survey and let's ask the residents, what do they want for the city to be? And, you know, do we want high density? I understand that we, you know, growth is going to be inevitable. And, you know, what the big question that I've been asking you guys is what would we had a build out plan that was around 2040, and what would that build out plan look like if we didn't do any zone changes right now? So at one point, we had some projections for population growth, and we designated low density and some medium density. Well, those projections were factored into, you know, population growth. So I guess the question is that, you know, let's look to see what would we meet our build out and our population numbers if we kept the density level as it is right now. Also, really importantly, and I'm glad to have heard from the gentleman from Santa Clara, but we really need to be taking a look at our sister cities next door, and especially all that development that's around Harmons in Santa Clara. And, you know, there's a ton of high density there, as well as the short-term rentals. So, you know, the cumulative impact of all this building that's not only just going on in Ivins, but also in the surrounding cities, you know, we need to also take that into consideration. So the thing about it is that, you know, and Mayor, you just brought up our population is a majority retirees, and I'm not opposed to growth. I think, you know, that's going to be inevitable, but, you know, we need to take a look at our demographics and better understand, you know, who are we serving today. And when I did some statistics today online, well, we know that housing is crazy across the whole U.S., so this just doesn't set us apart here. But according to apartmentguide.com, in the area, there were 128 apartments that were available. I know that's not necessarily in Ivins, but 128 apartments are online right now so people can find some apartment living. We have, on Realtor.com, we have 43 listings in Ivins. of which almost half of them are under 500,000. So the affordability issue, is a problem, but, that's good to know that somebody's gonna buy a house, they're gonna have that same problem wherever they go pretty much, unless they're going to Tennessee or someplace, but. And then also the comment regarding, we need housing for nurses and teachers and things like that. Well, what is happening today with the nurses and the teachers that are currently working in our community? They're either they're commuting or they live here. So if we continue to build schools or hospitals or whatever, then we'll need to have staffing for that. But it just doesn't make any sense. So lastly, I just want to, related to this specific point, I want to urge you specifically that, to vote no on this today, and let's pause and take a look at, we've got plenty of time for us to be looking at what's going on with the general plan. That intersection, as the other two people have been talking about, that's the gateway to our city. And do we want that roundabout to look with, to have townhomes or even multifamily homes right in the gateway of our community? And we should all be proud of, looking at the vista and looking at the mountains. So I just don't think that, a townhome or a multifamily home is the right space for that. And then also related to the, the zone change is just really not compatible to the surrounding area. We have the medium density that's just north of that, low density, to the, I guess that's west. And the thought that we needed to be compatible with the high density that was next to it just doesn't make any sense. So I've got a suggestion, and sounds like we really need some pickleball courts. So this seems like this would be the great location for pickleball courts, right? Thank you.
You all know I don't allow that. Behave yourselves. Thank you. Are there any other comments? Yes, go ahead.
I have never been to a city council meeting, so thank you for the education. My name is Shauna Harrington. I am a resident of Ivins, and I have worked long and hard at my 60 years to come to a beautiful place. I paid a premium for the lot that I bought. It took me 2 jobs out of my life to get here. I'm not buying the argument that someone is a young family. To me, this is like the beach, right? I come from California. I escaped California. There was a reason why I came here. It was because I was hoping that the planning was much better, because if you go to the beach now in California, you see tons of homeless that have rated everything to be fair. And we can't tell them to move off the beach because it's not fair. And that's the California way of thinking. And, to me, this is like our beach. And for people who have been longtime residents, I would hate to have my view, covered. My house won't be covered personally, I don't think. But again, for the people that are here, I think it's just sad. And to me, when I look at that parcel, to me, all I see is green money. Okay, someone's making a lot of money on this. The developers, as well as the person whose lot is as Mr. Papadopoulos, if I have the name correctly, and he has the right to do that, it's his land. But if he's been here for 40 years and he has pride in the city, to me, that doesn't make sense. That's not resonating. Because if he had pride in the city, he wouldn't want to build high density there. So with that said, it would be wonderful if I was a young family to come to the beach and have this beautiful view, because it's fair, but this is a premium place and a gorgeous place to live, and whoever has been here so far has done an amazing getting us here, and I'm one of the new people, and I'm trying to keep it as beautiful, and that's all I'm going to say because I wasn't prepared. But anyway, that's it.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Sandra Roberts. I'm a resident of Ivins, and I didn't plan on doing this, but the last meeting I went to, and that was the election for the new board member, city council member. And each applicant, you each asked, were you able to make, or are you able to make hard decisions on the resources that we have available to us? Now, I pose you the same question that you asked them. Are you able to make the hard decisions on the resources that we have, especially water, because that was a big concern at the last meeting? and say no to this. And I agree with everything that has already been said. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kyle Dose, and I also escaped California. And when we came here, we looked at multiple cities, Washington, Santa Clara, Ivins, and we fell in love with the scenery, the openness. I live in that same development that Mark over here does, and so I'm nervous, I don't like to speak out. But I look at this, and it kind of reminds me of where I had left, San Diego. And they did the same thing there. It started out single-family homes, and then pretty soon it became high density, and then opened the floodgate. And then all new construction is high-density condos, apartments. There's no more single-family homes. I'm 33. My brother-in-law's 26. My neighbor's 33, and we bought those homes. So the whole thing about affordability, I don't buy it. I'm just a mechanic, and I bought that. So work hard. You can get the home. We don't need to build affordable housing. What about this lot over here next to us? What's that going to become if we make that high density? Will that become high density next? It's just going to open it up. And then I'm right back where I left. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Tell us what you really think. Thank you all. If there's anyone else, Bill, please.
Yes, thank you for looking at our application. I appreciate it. I'm Bill Papanicholas. I am the owner and would be the developer of the project. And in looking at all this, I realized the affordability issue is really difficult, as all you guys know, in Ivins and throughout Greater St. George. It is actually a crisis for many people, moderate income people. It's difficult to find any housing. This particular parcel, we're losing about 15% of it to right-of-ways. So it is quite a large amount typically that you would give up for right-of-ways. It's on a roundabout. It's next to townhomes all around it. The city owns that little corner right there directly west of us. So the Planning Commission suggested and recommended townhomes. And while we could do townhomes there, and there's a great market for that, and it would be helpful, we would prefer to do something that's a little more affordable, which would be either condos or townhomes without garages. And it's simply to make, I've lived here for a long time. I really love this city. I think I've helped in many ways to make it a better city. But I think we need affordable housing to a degree. This isn't going to be affordable in the definitional sense, because the only way you can do that is with apartments that people rent. So this will be more affordable than the typical townhome. So what we would like to request is some type of zoning, which we'd have to figure out how it would work, that would eliminate apartments, but allow either condos or townhomes without attached garages, which makes it less costly to develop and build, but that equates into a sale that is less money than the typical townhome. So it doesn't really configure well to single family. We would be sensitive to the homes to the north. We think we can close off that road right there. And it would be a nice project, whatever we ended up being allowed to build there. So I just wanted to relay those things to you. And if you have any questions, Matt or me would be glad to respond.
Thank you, Bill.
I wasn't planning to say anything this evening, but I decided I think I should. I'm Chris Haddad, and I'm a resident of Ivins. And I live over in Shadow Canyon, which is very close to this whole area. After listening to everything and looking at the map, actually looking at this, now it is really concerning me, the fact that it's starting to look very hodgepodge out there off of 91. There's so many things going on there. You've got some beautiful, expensive homes. You've got those town homes at Red Vista. You've got so many things going on there that people actually are asking, what's with the townhomes? What's with this? What's with that? Is that the picture we want to give of Ivins? I don't think so. When I came here, which is only 4.5 years ago, from California, like so many others, getting away from seeing so many areas that was being developed to put as many units as we could on the smallest spaces and just jamming up neighborhoods and communities. And this is the way it started. Please think twice about making this high density. I would even rather see duplexes. And many people starting out, young people, duplexes is a nice way to go. They have good community with neighbors and such, and 1 story, 2 units together. Think about something like that. But more townhomes, no. Thank you.
Thank you. So, ma'am, sorry, you can make that question here where it can be recorded, please.
I don't understand it. If you don't have garages, then isn't that more homes?
It's a different
Maybe I
type of
don't
parking.
quite understand, or is it just, yeah?
So that's actually for a future discussion, like
Okay.
he mentioned,
Okay.
really not part of the zoning thing, but it's a good point.
Okay, thank you.
So Matt, you're welcome to make a comment in the public hearing. I invited you up to make a presentation before.
Thank you. Again, thank you, Mayor and council members and residents of Ivins City. I did jot down some notes on some of the concerns that was mentioned, and then I'll probably try and share a couple of the things that each of the cities in Utah is, I don't want to say held accountable, but will need to do a report on. First off, there's ways around, like anything else, around the water issue. If you use the low flow water systems or fixtures or appliances, we've found that in a multifamily project, your water use drops between 40 to 60% less than a residential home because of, again, the area that's being used there. The other comment was on danger with Highway 91. I believe, like the mayor mentioned, that can be addressed obviously as we go through the process of how we design the project and not allowing access or back doors or anything to come out to 91, and everything's more focused internal versus what the roads and what 91 could bring. Privacy, again, the good neighbors to the north, the single family residential homes there. Again, that's all part of design. We can move, maybe the building towards 91 and leaving that back or northern part where the buildings are not up against. Again, these are all things that we got to work on. We don't have the answers, but we are open to working out something that makes sense. The last comment that I'd like to share with the audience is there is a bill called Senate SB 34 in the state of Utah, where it's requiring municipalities to come up with a plan to address attainable housing. Really, if you look at that plan from the state and you look at the Ivins City Attainable Housing or Affordable Housing Plan, that's a document. It all turns towards what we don't want to talk about tonight is density, because that's part of the reasons to try and, again, reduce cost. So there are strict guidelines in the state where each municipality is required to come up with some strategy. I'm not saying that this is the answer to the strategy, but hopefully as we work through the scenario that maybe we can come and be a part of the solution and not add more to the demand, I guess, on services in Ivins. So that's, again, that's where we're coming from. Our only request is to a zone change. Obviously, we can get more into detail if, there is some support there. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer any of them.
Yeah, so just be available.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I'm going to close the public hearing unless anyone else has a comment that they wish to make. Thank you. So the public hearing is now officially closed. We're going to move to the item B on the agenda under 4. Council will now discuss and consider approval of ordinance number 2022-03, an ordinance of Ivins City, Utah regarding a concurrent land use change and zone change from LDR-RA-1 to HDR-R-TH or townhomes, which is basically what we've been discussing. And so now your comments are digested and going to be a part of the discussion that's going to take place. So a couple of clarifying things. Water is a huge concern here. I will just tell you that there is a motion afoot now in the Water Conservancy District that is going to help the city understand where the stopping point is. Until we have that information, the city cannot actually use that as an argument to stop development because we have no grounds to declare that we're out of water. That information has to come from outside the city. We're wholly dependent on the Water Conservancy District, and that information is forthcoming. But any property owner is entitled to file an application to develop land. And at the time that application is filed, they are entitled to whatever consideration our ordinances at that particular moment in time grant them. So this discussion cannot get terribly speculative. It's going to have to be based on our current ordinances, and there will have to be grounds for the decision that's made. They will have to be grounded in what are called findings, meaning whoever makes this motion is going to have to declare a reason for whatever action is going to be taken. So with that, I'm going to open this up to the council to offer their comments on this agenda item.
Mayor?
Please.
Perhaps just a clarification to that. So land use and zoning considerations are legislative in nature for this body to make. And so there is some level of discretion in that. There does have to be a finding that your decision is in the public interest, but it is not as substantial findings of fact as would be therefore an administrative decision, which would be a subdivision application, and the processes that Matt referred to that would come after this decision. So you have the greatest discretion now as opposed to later, just to clarify that this is a legislative decision. Later will be administrative decisions, and then your findings of fact have to become much more specific and grounded. Thanks.
Thank you. Might be helpful to know too, for those of you who live nearby, that the Ivins City design limit on height is 25 feet, whether it's multifamily or single family. But your point's well taken that as you pack them together in long buildings, the impact is definitely different, isn't it, than homes that are separated. So council, anyone wish to begin?
Mayor?
Councilmember Scott.
I'll try to be fairly brief, but I've sort of went into a lot of research detail, and we heard from residents tonight and also from emails, issues, concerns about view protection, sort of aesthetic issues on design, traffic, water, and related items. We also heard from the applicant that he is focused on affordability, and I believe this applicant really would build a very good-looking product, but he is focused on affordability, which is Not only something that's admirable, which I really respect him a lot for, but Dale keeps telling us that we really have to think about affordability because the state's really putting the onus on us to solve that problem. And so all of these concepts from the residents and the applicant are issues that are echoed in our general plan. So I started out looking at this particular issue as a very site-specific thing. And I really like the applicant's affordability component that I mentioned. And I like that he's local rather than an out-of-state developer coming in. But I do believe that the most important consideration that we need to focus on is the impact, particularly on the immediate neighbors to this property. And so here are a couple of examples. It's a nice coincidence that we saw the concept plan tonight. And as Mike pointed out, the decision was made, I think, a number of years ago. It came to the Planning Commission, and the land, I believe, was zoned for 7,500 square foot single-family lots. But the Planning Commission and the City Council decided to allow multifamily on that site. But as a buffer, as Mike pointed out, it was insisted that we put duplexes along the eastern boundary of that site because east of that site, there is single family. And my recollection is that over the years, there's been a lot of focus on creating these transition zones and buffers to protect adjoining properties. And so that's what happened in that situation. And the second example is, I think it was late last year, the City Council considered a request to allow townhomes on 200 West between 600 South and Highway 91, right across from Shadow Canyon. And Red Mountain Townhomes was directly west adjoining this property. So from that standpoint, it seemed to make sense. But Shadow Canyon is a single-family neighborhood with 10,000 square foot lots, and it's directly east. So there would be that impact. And the City Council decided, again, sort of as a transition buffer area, to keep it as a single-family zone, but make it 7,500 square foot lots. So it's a little denser, but similar concept. You're going from 10,000 square foot single family, then the next is 7,500 square foot single family, a little denser, and then the townhomes. So for the property we're dealing with tonight, I think we need to be consistent in the way we're making decisions like we were in those two cases. So the Haven development is directly north of the subject property. It has 10,000 square foot single family lots. So if we're going to be consistent, we wouldn't put townhomes right next to that. I do think that the current land use of low-density residential is impractical for the site, but I also think that townhomes are too dense given the adjoining single-family use. So we could change the land use to medium-density residential like the Haven, or we could just leave it as low-density residential. At this point, I recommend no change until we get some answers to a few questions that were kind of brought up tonight. I mean, do we really need multifamily housing of any townhomes, apartments, condos to relieve our affordability problems? The answer to that would come from an update of our affordable housing plan. I think our real plan goes back to 2019, and a lot has changed since then. And if it turns out that we really do need to provide some variety of maybe not affordable housing, but more affordable than the typical new single-family home, then the question is, where is it most appropriate to do where it has the least impact for adjoining properties? And so at this point, I recommend no change, leave it at low-density residential, but if medium density would not be incompatible with the property to the north or sort of the philosophy that we've used in other situations.
Thank you. Others?
Did I suck all the wind out of the room?
Oh, you're just giving us things to
As
think
usual.
about.
As usual.
So the escapees from California witnessed something that occurred that is easy to label as a money grab or whatever. most of you in this room do not come out of the development community. And I will tell you that there are only certain ways to reduce the cost of housing, and that is to reduce the footprint, to reduce the complexity and size of the construction, and then in the case of entities like Habitat for Humanity, you seek donated materials and volunteer labor. It just simply is the case that you can't wave a wand and somehow magically create affordable housing. So congratulations to you guys who got into these houses, but the reality is in Ivins City that attainable housing, even with the projects that we see occurring in our city, the demand for moderate income housing is the greatest demand that we have by far in this city. And what we're seeing at a state level, and the legislature has bills in this current session, is pressure, as Dale mentioned, being put on cities that are requiring us to open our communities to more and more high density. And I can tell you flat out that if we fail as cities to do that, the state's simply going to take our land use authority away and say, here's what you're going to do. So we need to be, we up here, your elected representatives, need to be very careful as to how we go about making decisions like this, because the panacea of having a city with just everybody has a perfect view of the mountain and so forth is simply not a practical reality. And so we need to focus on realities and not speculative kinds of concept. The fact is that Highway 91 is capable of sustaining the traffic that would be added by this project. Our transportation master plan takes into account a lot of additional growth. I heard the comment that we don't have much open land to develop. We're under half developed in this city in terms of the land area. So we've got a long ways to go, emphasizing the importance of our master plan, because it is going to make a difference as to how we end up. But the holding zones that we've had have not painted a realistic picture of probably what the ultimate appearance and population of the city is going to be because of these very things. Councilmember Johnson, are you ready?
Go ahead and finish.
No, I'm always finished as soon as somebody else is ready to talk.
I just had a few comments regarding some of the things that have been mentioned. First of all, we do have an affordable housing task force who has been given the task of coming up with ways to find affordable housing or attainable housing in our community. And I know that committee is responsible to send strategies of what is required, and the state allows us more time if we are showing that we're doing what we say we're doing. And I know some of the strategies, one of them was to rezone for higher densities, and that's not an easy thing. I'm gonna go back to the same thing with me. I lived here when there were 100 people in Ivins and have seen it grow, and I didn't ever want it to see it get like it is. I would have preferred to keep us with 30, 40 homes and leave Ivins the way it is, but that's not the way it works. We're always going to be growing, and it's hard to do. But some of the issues that were mentioned tonight, one was where would we find less of an impact if we need to have this affordable housing or attainable housing with multifamily or townhomes or whatever it is we decide on. Where is there going to be less of an impact in our community to put those things? And from what I can see, I don't think there will ever be less of an impact anywhere, because wherever you're going to put it, there's going to be somebody who's impacted and doesn't want that. And so we just have to do the best we can. Another one is, do we want high density? That was a question that was asked, and I think the answer to that is absolutely no. but we don't always get what we want, and sometimes we have to make concessions and do things that are a little more difficult in order to benefit everybody, or more anyway. I know that attainable housing is really difficult here in Ivins. I wish that my children could live here, but they never will be able to because they cannot afford the homes that are here. And it would be nice to have less expensive or more attainable housing. Another thing that was mentioned is that we need to think about the demographics and the fact that it was mentioned that we have become more of a retirement community. And I would propose that a lot of the reason why it has become a retirement community is because of the high price in housing and the fact that we don't have the ability to keep our families and the younger people here. They have to go elsewhere to provide for their families. And so I am in favor of trying to find a solution. I don't know what that solution is yet, but to find a way to get more attainable housing, and that is sadly going to require some type of multifamily or townhome or something like that in our community, whether it's on this lot or somewhere else. It's got to come somewhere, so.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Councilmember Anderson?
so I was on the planning commission when this was voted on before, and I was here when the townhomes got put in. I've been sitting in these meetings since 2003, and I remember sitting in lots of meetings, and we said we didn't want Highway 91 to look like Sunset, okay? And then I sat in this one meeting on a legislative decision where affordable housing became the whole thought process of what we need to do for Ivins. And that's why those townhomes got there. And those townhomes have great people in them, because I know a lot of them, okay? But it has caused a lot of anguish in our community because it went outside. In one decision, we went outside what we were trying to accomplish for years about Highway 91, the views and stuff. And at that same time when we made that decision, it was a legislative decision to change the zoning, because I believe it was zoned the same as what we got now. What it did, it caused grief for that landowner, because we've already went through his on the east, and now we're dealing with the one on the west. And I think this was in before the Havens started, and the Havens turned out to be a very nice community. And so it just keeps putting us in a more awkward position as we go. When we say the holding zones, I think the holding zones only relate to zoning. They don't relate to land use. And we always said, as I sat in the meetings, the land use was correct. And we kept chipping away at the land use and changing the land use, so that allowed us to change the zone. So I believe people, when they say they don't know what our zones was, I think they're misreading our maps, because land use always has more authority than what the zone was, because land use tells us what you can do there. The zone was just put on there as a holding zone, but the land use tells the picture what you can do in that area. So I don't think we've really give people the misperception if they know anything about land, because the land use drives that zone. And so right now we've put, in my opinion, we've put a lot of people under duress, because we got townhome in the middle, beautiful subdivision there, and I think the other one's going on right right to the east. That's already approved. And they're bigger lots, I think, than the Havens. We've got a property owner owned this one for 10 years. I know the Ences have owned it all their life, because they inherited it from their great-great-grandpa or whatever. And so the anguish they went through, because the people in the Shadow Canyons, they bought single-family homes, and they bought what they thought was around there. And so from a town, when I voted on planning commission, I voted because they wanted apartments. I voted for townhomes, and the reason I voted for townhomes, and the reason is because I know what it's like to give up 30 feet of road, plus he's got to give up the roundabout. His access is terrible now because of the way the townhomes are done. And so I don't, at the same token, I'm feeling for the people in the Havens, but they can build a 2-story house and you'll have the same effect as a townhome. So, I mean, that's an argument, but it still doesn't mean that if somebody wants to build a house there. So that's why I voted townhomes. Now, was that the right answer? I can't tell you that. That's why I was trying to get your guys' opinions, because this has been a conversation that I hear about almost on a daily basis. And so,
Given Councilmember Scott's argument about the buffers, and that has been a fairly consistent thing that the council's done
Yes.
over the last several years. And I think, Mike, you even said the idea of duplexes across that north boundary. And so maybe there's something reasonable in that sort of combination. Either of you two?
I was just gonna comment. Thanks, Lance, that's helpful. And we were part of those discussions. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Dale, or Mayor, or Lance, part of the, I guess, offense, if you will, of these townhomes is we actually missed the way the roof lines were. We didn't follow our ordinances. The ordinances that were in place, had we followed them, would not have allowed those wrong roof lines that we see today.
Mayor?
Yeah.
It would have helped, yes. And that's why no offense, Matt, but when you said maybe we give a little more distance on that boundary and push to Highway 91, I'm totally against that, because we're already, to me, we're pushing our, that's not what we viewed since, I've been listening to people since 2003. And I was here when I didn't make it when Jenny did. There were 600 people in Ivins when I moved here. So that was a few years later.
Mayor,
Please.
may I? This is a difficult thing to look at, because you've got the Haven to the north, and I don't know if that was always medium density residential, the Haven, or if that was low density at some point and it got zoned to medium density. I'm a big fan of the buffer. When I was on the planning commission, we had some resort mixed use property, and we said, okay, you're next to single family, you have got to put a row of basically matching so that you mitigate now I don't know if that's even possible here. But I do really think there's a need for moderate income housing, obviously, and affordable housing. We have nurses, we have teachers, we have policemen, we have firemen, we have people, mechanics, we have people that live that work for us and serve us, and, we need to do the best we can to get some affordable housing. Now, the market drives all this. And tomorrow, they could put a beautiful subdivision in, and I'm sorry, but if it's bought up by all investors, and then they rent them out, and the rents are sky high, it doesn't do what moderate income what we want it to do. So it's a difficult decision, but the market does drive all this, unfortunately, as to what people are gonna pay for things. But for my purpose, I'd rather see some type of a buffer for the Haven people if we're going to do anything in here. And I do agree with what the Planning Commission said, which was townhouses with garages. And I know that raises the price, but I think it's important that there's garages on this property. I just, especially off on Highway 91, I just don't think we want the covered parking. And so I don't know if that helps anybody, but that's kind of my thought process is, cannot we do something along that north end? Can they cluster into the middle and do some more clustering when they're building this, and have some, maybe just have a better plan than just like that next to them, where everything's just boxes, bam, 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 bam. It could look really nice if somebody could come up with a plan where there's a nice buffer, and then maybe there's some things in the middle that are more dense. I know that's probably, I'm not the developer. And I also think that people have a right to develop their property. If people didn't develop property, none of us would live in Ivins. We'd all be living somewhere else, because someone developed where we all lived. It's hard though when you buy, but when you buy a vacant piece of property, it's tough. You don't know what's gonna go there all the time. And it's hard, but I see their point of, let's not put two-story townhouses right back on their backyards, because that just doesn't seem right to me.
Mayor?
Chuck? So we require connectivity, and I see connections to both the project to the north and also the townhome project to the east. As any plan came through for your review, you're going to insist that those connections are made, correct?
Yes, that is why we had those projects provide those connections. We would want a way in and a way out, and we'd want neither one of those to be onto Highway 91, and there's not really enough room to make it tie into 400 West there.
So how do you see this parcel? I mean, Bill's got a really tough little piece of land here because there's no, if there's no access onto 91, and the north boundary of this parcel is too close to the roundabout to provide access there, how are they getting in and out?
Through the two connections that are provided.
Right here.
Yeah. So off to,
There's the connection to the north, and there's a connection to the east.
yeah.
Through Haven.
So they go through the Havens and they'll go through the townhomes.
Yeah.
Mayor, would Chuck be able to maybe explain to the, why we don't allow that many entrances on Highway 91? So people understand why we're trying to limit it?
Yeah, well, so Highway 91 is an arterial street, and as an arterial, it's to the benefit of a free-flowing and to improve mobility and the ability to prevent conflicts and potential accidents, to just limit the driveways and accesses that come onto Highway 91 as much as possible. And then we also have rules that say there's certain distances between intersections that we will put accesses, because if you put too many accesses that are really close together, again, you're creating potential conflicts for accidents. So that's the philosophy.
Yes, Jenny.
Did I hear correctly, Mr. Liu? Did you say that you were hoping to delete that north road then? Is that what you were saying prior to this discussion, was that you were hoping to do that? Did I hear that right?
I think that was one of the planned, to try and not go down, I'm thinking that is Morning Retreat Drive, I think that's what it's called. Try and control any access going in and out of the Haven. The other option that we obviously we're looking at is Augusta, coming in and out of Augusta from the townhome from the east. Again, we're not sure how it all works out at the end of the day. Obviously, there's dead ends and reasons for dead ends. Certain dead ends you can't go through for sure. But that was our hope, is that we can work with the folks in the north.
Okay, so then to follow, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, to go ahead and follow up with that then, thank you. If we're doing connectivity with the different subdivisions and such, then that road would have to stay there, which would mean that there was that much more of a buffer because the road would go right up alongside that edge, is that correct? So that would cause a natural buffer to begin with, leaving, and then if you set it back a little bit, that's gonna give you a lot more, so.
Yeah, so Chuck, I think the point she's making is that that road on the north end of the townhome project is part of the access that's provided to this parcel?
No, not really. There's not really room, even though we did have them tie the right-of-way over there, potentially did tie in utilities or such. It's only a half-width road.
So that's basically just a right turn into the Haven?
Yeah, right.
So the access is the second road down into the townhome project, and then the road dropping down on the sort of the west end rather of the Haven?
Yeah, that's correct.
So roundabouts are designed for multiple intersections. Is that an option for access? Once again, I'm getting a little away from zoning here, but just as curiosity.
Yeah, absolutely. You could do, I mean, it's a little tricky to try to slide that in and just looking at the design that we have right now. I've seen it. It certainly has been done.
So the roundabout, you'd have a hard right turn into this parcel and a soft right turn up into 400.
Yeah, it looks like it's doable.
That's right, at the intersection.
Well, everyone has spoken. I hear an interest in the need for attainable or affordable housing. I hear a resounding support for the idea of a buffer. Councilmember Scott has suggested that this remain medium density, did you say?
It's low-density
Low density
residential
now.
now. And my recommendation is to leave it at low-density residential. However, if we made it medium-density residential, that would match what the Haven has. So in lieu of a buffer, you're doing the same thing. And just for a point of clarification, you know, I wasn't suggesting duplexes on this site. I was talking about how the city has used the duplexes on the concept plan's east boundary as a buffer. The other thing that both Lance and Adele talked about is just sort of the land use plan. So I went back 15 years ago. The land use plan showed for the area from 400 west all the way over to 200 west, and from 400 south all the way to Highway 91 was low-density residential land use, the whole thing. That's about 150 acres. And now, so then the Haven got changed to medium-density residential, the townhomes got changed to high-density residential, and that wasn't the vision. And so that's why I said, I mean, low-density residential has turned out to be very awkward for this site because of everything else that we've done that was in conflict with the vision of the land use plan. And I think that Jenny brings up great points about, we need attainable, affordable housing. We need different housing types, or we probably need it. So I would like to see documentation from that on the affordable housing plan. And we have launched this effort to revisit our general plan and our land use plan and get a lot of public input. And I really think that if we do need some higher density housing, townhomes, apartments, condos, whatever it might be, that should be part of this process in re-looking at the general plan and the land use plan and really figure out the best locations. Yes, there's not going to be any ideal place to put the highest density housing because it's going to impact somebody. But let's not look at it site specific. Let's look at the whole city and say where is it logical? Where is it least impactful? Where is it most beneficial to do this?
Mayor.
You're going to be a genius if you can point to another spot on the map that's not going to be as controversial as this. Yes, Councilmember Anderson.
I'm going to make, and I'll probably be booed for it, but what I keep looking at, I didn't realize that isn't a full road through there. That even makes this more complicated. Because now they are going through the Havens, and now they are going through the townhomes to get out of their project.
Right.
So now their project has to have some,
Other than, that's why I asked the question about access into the roundabout.
and I'm gonna say, I hope we stay away from that based on how we use roundabouts now, because that makes that a tricky roundabout, and it's a main one. But let's say the roundabout's not an option, okay, maybe it is, I don't know that. But what I know about them, that would make it very complicated in that short distance. But like Mike said, I've sat here watching land, it become from low-density residential, and that means none of these houses would even be built if we'd followed the general plan. And I even submitted where Shadow Canyon was in 1989 for an RV park. And I was turned down because of sewer. But if sewer would have been there, they probably would have given it to me. And they don't remember too, we had a salvage yard on the east side where Indigo Trails is. That was a salvage yard, and they come in and ask for a new permit. We actually bought them out so we didn't have it. And so I guess where I'm going with this is I think we need to, because he's owned the property for 10 years, and when you put this, when it was made a legislative decision to put townhomes there, I think we've caused, the city has some level, because low-density residential don't work there at all. And medium density, in my opinion, doesn't work there. I think it has to be an R15 and then it has to be townhomes against the townhomes and keep our distances just like we are on the highway now, because we've created this, now we got to clean it up. And so to be fair to him even a little bit, that you're going to have to, and to the people of the Havens, there's got to be some buffer. We sat on planning meetings for 4 or 5 years together, and it was always, we were always trying to keep if you wanted high density, you needed to give a buffer. Now, he's only got a 3.13 acre parcel, so it makes it complicated. But if it's R15, it's still a single family home. And then the townhomes, maybe along the Havens, it has to be R15 and then townhomes and the rest of it. So that's what I don't know how everybody.
Mayor?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, so again, it still would be single family.
Yes.
And yeah, so that would mean that we would change the land use to high density, but the zone to R15.
That's correct.
And so,
Well, R15 along there, and so it's a double zone.
It's a double zone.
So you got one layer of houses that are R15, or two if they prefer, and then townhomes against the townhomes.
similar to what we saw in the concept plan with multifamily and duplexes. So we'd have townhomes and R15.
Yep. So, and I just think we're trying to appease two different thought processes,
Another thought is that rightly or wrongly, the townhome project that was approved and unfortunately a design that was approved against our ordinance has resulted in what we have.
Yeah.
And this parcel is impacted by both of these existing projects. So I would concur that against the existing townhome project, especially if we have one that is attractively designed, Matt, I'm going to hold you to that. I'm going to sit in the meetings where you show the architecture. But something that would somehow mask a little bit of what really is a disappointing outcome. No offense to anybody that may live in that project, like you said, it has nothing to do with that, but a mistake was made, frankly. I don't know how else you do it and have a marketable parcel, right? Because at the end of the day, so once again, I'll just summarize. What I'm hearing, I think you say, and Mike, you not necessarily concur with, but, or at least recognizing.
It's following what I was saying our history has been, you create that buffer zone. So I'm mulling this around in my head right now.
So the idea now is that north end, and so the connection, Matt, into the Haven is going to exist. That road was put there specifically to allow for public safety vehicles to be able to access. I mean, that connectivity, as you know, the day of the cul-de-sac is gone in favor of us tying everything together. And so I don't think engineering is going to let this go through without there being access there. But if it is access into residential lands, which is what you're suggesting, and then down into the interior of the project, and particularly towards the east, that you would have, and you're suggesting townhomes, which means garages attached, and yes, that is a cost issue, but it's a big deal in Ivins, so.
And I believe in the Havens, there's some 8,600 square foot lots. There was an overlay, if I remember right.
Yeah.
Is that true, Mike? On the Havens?
You've stumped me.
Huh?
No, this Mike.
I believe there was lot averaging on
Yeah.
Haven.
Yeah.
Because there's some big ones and some smaller ones.
Yeah, and the ones down on the south end actually are among the smaller.
Mayor, excuse me, but we would like to explore access and ingress, egress, and closing that road if it works and makes sense. So I'd like not to just discount it as it can't happen. I believe we can make it happen if it all works.
Well, that guy right there is who you got to satisfy, because the council is going to look to him and say, is that okay? And if he says no,
Well,
go ahead and draw what you want, but.
some of the council might.
So I'd like to find out if we have any consensus at all developing around this concept, or if we are headed to a.
Yeah, so, excuse me, Mayor, so let me understand what we think we're saying, right, like you said. So we would definitely want the buffer along Haven.
I hear the majority of you saying that.
I mean, that's what we're thinking, meaning, and you're saying, Mike and Lance, they can do 5,000 square foot lots, single family.
Lance is
And then-
saying,
I'm saying.
Lance is
I'm
saying it,
thinking.
you're thinking it, but then the townhomes would be So you're talking about townhomes down on the east side and the middle, but that back row, but the back has to,
The north,
the
the
north,
north
the
end.
north
Yeah.
side has to help mitigate the effect on the Haven, on Haven.
Yeah, because we're moving from, whether they're 7,500 or 87, I don't know the exact numbers, to 5,000, and that's how we've always, in our communications, that's how we've.
always
And then
tapered.
we're moving, so because it's gonna be part of it becomes part of the townhome route when you got the roads like they are. Now, if the other road was there, I probably would think different about it, so.
Well, the fact is, the buffers have worked. I
Yeah.
think that's why we've continued to do them, is that they've solved problems in a number of applications that have come forward. It may not be ideal for the developer, but that's not our job either.
Well, and it protects, like the gentleman that got up here and says, oh, you don't want a 25-foot house there, now it's an actual single family. And it actually has
Still a
less mass to
25
it.
house, though.
Huh?
Could still be 25, though.
Yeah, it's just hard but it actually creates less of a mass than
Well, and
their
that's,
home.
yes, excuse me, Mayor, that's one thing that we've talked about in the planning commission, and I know it's been a while, I mean, it's been about 3 years since I was on it, but the massing, and I think that people have to understand, if you had a smaller house behind you, it's less of an effect on you than than a big giant townhouse behind you.
Yes.
Or the house that's built on the 8 or 10,000 square foot
Right,
lots.
on the square foot lot, yeah.
It's less massing.
Are you still thinking?
Thinking.
Well, we're gonna come to a vote here in a minute. I hope you can get that through your synapses by then. Any other comments? Dennis, we haven't heard a whole lot from you.
I'm listening and learning. I'm also looking at, I'm not the applicant, and we're looking at commercial availability, right, as well in this whole land use project that we're undertaking, I assume, because we have low inventory on commercial property
Oh,
zoning.
yes, I'm sure that'll be a part of
Yeah.
it is a part of the discussion, yes.
But commercial, we dream that we can tell where to put commercial.
For sure.
But commercial goes where it wants to go,
True.
it needs to go.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we had big dreams 2008.
We need to have a car wash zone. Kidding. I'm totally kidding.
That's not even a joke.
I'm just waking everybody up.
Can I say one thing?
Yes, please.
So just a quick anecdote about a car wash. On, 2 days ago, I was working in the assessor's office right on the window of Snow Canyon, or St. George Boulevard, and somebody had a trailer with car sludge in it, and it let go in front of our building and splashed every window, the whole building, the county building was filled with this disgusting, smelly stuff. So when you say car wash, I think, oh, car wash sludge. It was all over our windows. It took them all day to clean it. Anyways, okay, sorry. I digress.
No, brief diversion.
Okay, we're not putting a car wash there, no one's thinking that.
No car wash.
So I may have one or more of you who are close to being able to make a motion regarding this. But I want to make sure we don't overlook any discussion or.
Tough one.
Well, you want to see if that flies?
The motion? I'm not good at making motions, so Mike has to.
You say I move, and then you just tell us what you told us.
Go ahead, Lance.
So I move that on the subject property on 400 West and Highway 91, Blue Cactus Development LTD, that we do the land use at high-density residential with a split zone of R15 on the northbound boundary, and then the remaining could fall under the townhomes with garages. And I don't know exactly what that zone is.
RTH.
RTH, okay.
Okay? So that was clear. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
It's now moved and seconded that we're approving an ordinance here, but Dale, do you have sufficient data to
Yes, I understand.
translate that into the
Yes.
ordinance? Okay. Is everyone clear on the motion? Roll call vote once again. Pardon me.
Discussion?
Discussion, yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
so Lance, would it just be one row of single family? Would we require 2 deep?
I put out if you guys feel it's necessary, you can bring that into the motion.
Okay.
That's talked about frequently, but I can tell you in terms of buffers, the house across the street makes very little difference. It's the
Because
one,
of the
it's the one
angles,
in
it's
your
the one-
backyard that makes the huge difference.
Okay, so then the other option, maybe, would you consider medium-density residential and R175?
I'm just telling you the way I've looked at that property and what I watched history go, that's why I said what I said, but I'm open to, obviously,
Well,
just,
procedurally, we have a motion and a second.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have to act on that.
Okay.
And if the motion fails, then a substitute motion could be made.
yeah,
So I'm gonna call for a roll call vote at this point in time then, beginning with Councilmember Anderson.
aye.
And Councilmember Murphy.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Mayor.
I'll say nay.
And Councilmember Scott.
Nay.
See,
Motion carries.
that's not fair, because they knew already 3 votes were there, so they can do it without no pressure.
We could do ballots if you prefer.
Say no, so you're not, nobody's mad at you.
Well, that is now the ordinance. So we'll see you next time, I guess, huh? All right, council, we're going to move then to,
Mayor, can I make a comment?
please.
I think this is a good example of when we make a legislative decision, we gotta look past what we're doing, because there's lots of consequences. And I'm telling you, I hear about this every day, but the people that live there, it's great living space, so I don't ever wanna make people think that it's not great living space, because it is. They say it's very spacious and enjoyable from a living space.
Thank you. Item 4C, we're going to open a public hearing in a moment on the Planning Commission's recommendation to amend Chapter 16 regarding ground-mounted solar and allowable uses. Mike?
So I think a lot of the questions that we had 2 weeks ago was exactly what do ground mounts look like. So I've taken some pictures, and hopefully you've all had a chance to look at it.
Yes, thank you.
So I don't know if we need any further information until we hear from the public, unless you guys have questions for me.
I just have one question
Please.
there. So in the document that we're looking at, can you define again what's in red? This is something that has been changed since our last time, or something, can you just explain?
That's the changes from the original ordinance.
Okay.
So we've basically taken the requirements and put them into where the previous solar roof mount requirements were, and then we expounded them to ground mounts. And then it also, that same area talks about mechanical equipment. So we felt that was a good place to, because we are talking about screening and the looks of equipment or accessory structures on a property. So.
Other questions? All right, thank you. With that, then, I'm going to open the public hearing and invite anyone who wishes to make a comment on this specific agenda item to come forward, and we'd ask you once again to state your name as you begin.
Hello, I'm Susie Appel, and after listening to all of that, I'm just looking for a solar panel. That's it. That's all I want. Okay. Over 5 months ago, we sent our electrician to Ivins City to apply for a building permit for ground mount solar panels. 5 months ago, it was in September, the last week of September. October 14th, he was called by Mike Haycock that said he could not issue us one. We have since been very confused. We were told there was no ordinance for ground mount solar. So in my mind, I thought, well, if there's no ordinance, then why can't we do it? And I thought for sure that there were ground mount solar panels in Ivins. I knew I couldn't be the only one, the first person that wanted that. So we've been coming here for months. And here we are today. We took the time, my husband took the time to drive by and drive around, and I sent some pictures to Dale and Cade that you're looking at right now.
Scroll through them.
Okay, so I'll kind of go through these. This particular photo is 200 West, and that's looking at the side of our house. Our house sits north-south facing. The solar panels that we'd like to have installed are on the very east side of my garage, okay? And you'll see a picture of that garage, I think maybe the next slide. Okay, so this picture is taken from the very front of our property on Highway 91. The solar panels that we want, ground mounted, or if you look at that garage there, are to the very east of that garage. We heard some concerns about reflection, that sort of thing. Honestly, the front of these panels, and my electrician's here too, he's happy to answer questions. The very first row is about 2 feet tall. And as they progress back, they go back to a height of, I believe, 6 feet 6 inches at the height. So
That's the rear row
the
of panels.
very row, yes, the last row. And I'm not certain how many rows, but he could tell you. You will not be able to see these solar panels from Highway 91. There's enough sagebrush, so on, and not to mention the ground that is next to my garage is, the grade changes. It's not flat next to my garage, it goes down, okay? So that's the location we're talking about. We thought it was important that we show you what we've been discussing all these months. Also, the one thing I did was I called Sharon and I said, hey, I'm convinced that there's got to be some other solar panels in Ivins. Could you please pull the permits? And so she sent me that. And she only had record of 3 homes with ground mount solar permits that were pulled in her computer system. She made a note, and I believe I sent you that attachment, Dale, of this document from Sharon at the city.
I don't have that. I just have.
Can you look up on the email I sent you, and it's just a PDF that you could open?
Whoa, you're way down there now.
That's it. Okay, that's the request form. Okay, this is the form. And for some reason, she seemed to think that she had to mark out all the addresses. I thought that building permits were public record, but apparently that's not the case. So she marked out the addresses, so we really had to look hard to take the pictures. But you will see permit number, let me put my glasses back on. 18265 is in Padre Canyon Estates. 17297 is in Padre Canyon Estates. And 16264 is in Red Mountain Estates. Her note at the bottom of this says, our other property in the early 2000s was permitted, but not on this file. So that tells me there were others that were permitted, but for whatever reason, they're not in the computer system.
One other,
One other?
yeah. There's her one.
Do we have what dates these were permitted?
Yes, they're right.
Yes.
They're right there.
Yep, 16, 17, 18.
Okay, the one that's not on this list is also in Padre Canyon Estates.
Yeah, I don't have record of it. But we took more photos of homes than are on this document. So I guess I'm asking the council, I feel like this, I'm trying not to take this personally, and I'm not going to, But why am I here? I don't understand why I'm here. We were told there wasn't an ordinance, so they had to make one. But clearly there had to be an ordinance because they permitted ground solar panels somewhere. And by the way, the pictures I've taken doesn't look like to me they're even screened. So I'm asking you to grant us a ground mount solar panel permit tomorrow. My costs most likely have gone up in the last 5 months. And I'm a little upset now, if you can't tell already. So that's my request. Any other questions you have, my electrician's here, happy to answer the questions, but I'd really like to get this finalized tonight. Thank you.
Thanks. Hello.
Hey, as developers and builders, Chris, Lance, answer a question. If you got a bid 5 months ago, or you gave a bid 5 months ago to build a home, and you were not issued a building permit for those 5 months, would you still honor that price?
Nope.
That's exactly right. That's what you have done to us. You set a precedent. I don't know why somebody didn't look to find out if there had been permits issued for a ground mount, and obviously there were. Now, I'd like to know who's going to pay for the additional cost for my ground mount by going through this. I shouldn't have to pay for it, but I'm going to have to get them installed if I want. Who did not check to see that that had already been issued? Who's not doing the job here? That's what I want to know. And who's going to cover the cost? 40%. Can anybody answer me that? Who's gonna help pay for that 40%? Because we weren't issued that. It's upsetting.
I can tell you what happens to me every day. I pay for it.
Well,
Because of issues just like this.
well,
Not particularly in Ivins, but everywhere.
but
So,
my point is
Mr.
that
Appel.
these were already issued. Ground mount was already issued. And if somebody would have gone back and found out that they had been issued, this could have been taken care of.
So you've got a legitimate complaint, in my opinion, but this public hearing isn't about who's going to pay the difference. It's about what should this ordinance be, and I'm sure the discussion's going to evolve into, was there one really at the time you applied? So
I
think.
understand, but realize our frustration.
No, I
with
do.
things like this,
do.
because this could have been
Totally
taken
get
care
it.
of if somebody would have gone back and found out there had been, it had been issued before. It could have been taken care of a lot sooner than this.
It is unfortunate.
That's my point.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Other comments? Let me guess, you're the electrician? Okay.
Mayor, council, Mike Hogan with Mike Hogan Electric and Solar. My concern is that in that first page you guys brought up, saying what you need to do with these ground mounts and the red, it only comes in one color, silver, the ground mount framework. The panels are black on black, which means they're black frame with the solar color panels. Lance, I did work for you, you know? So my question is to you councilmen, and preferably Lance, if you didn't have the roof space for that system that was on your house, you've got plenty of ground back behind that. Guaranteed you'd want to do a ground mount system.
I personally wouldn't, but yeah.
Right, so.
And it's not
for
my
these
house,
people,
actually.
These residents that have the property to put a ground mount system in, instead of putting it on your house and making me liable for their roof penetrations, I'd rather do a ground mount, preferably. They're easier, they're faster, you can maintain them. Fire department loves ground mounts better than roof mounts because they don't have to deal with them if anything happens in that house with a fire. So I think you should allow the ground mounts to still be installed. And like, Mr. Appel just said, there were previous permits issued. And obviously, nobody has ever found that ordinance saying yay or nay. Can't find it. So I agree, I should be able to come here tomorrow, pick up my permit, pay for it, and start that job. Because, yeah, the costs of these panels and equipment has gone up 40%. So, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, you do have a public comment on Zoom?
Thank you. I'll take it now. Go ahead, Andy. Can you unmute?
I think he's on.
Cade, can you bring him in?
Can he use the chat feature?
Sorry, Andy. It's our first Zoom meeting in this building.
Can he phone you?
That would be okay, because it's noticed as an electronic meeting. He is brought in, otherwise you wouldn't see him, but we're not hearing sound from him.
Can he,
Okay.
can he use the chat, Mayor?
Well, he could use the chat, but that's not very interactive.
Yeah.
We're not able to type any replies.
Can he phone a
So, Cade, pardon me. Cade, can you hear Andy?
Cade's on mute.
Cade's on mute.
I see that. He can unmute and tell me.
Do we have to turn something up on our end?
No.
Sure.
Mrs. Appel,
I love technology.
come here and dial your son's number for me, would you?
We can't hear you.
We can hear you guys, and I can hear him, it's just not coming in here for some reason.
Just
Dial it on
come and dial it on my phone, would you?
Yeah, I gotta look up the number though, because
No one
Speed
knows
dial
the
number.
Because it's in contacts, right?
I don't dial anything anymore. Technology is
If you just dial that number for me.
robots. City answers.
Andy, this is Mayor Hart. I've dialed you by phone because we're not able to get your audio into the council chambers. So you and I are sharing a mic. Would you go ahead and make your public comment, please?
Absolutely. First off, thank you guys for letting me have my comment, even though I'm not there. Zoom is very nice for that. The first thing I want to say is that the ground-mounted solar panels, first off, I'm kind of a tech guy, like I do digital marketing. I'm on my computer all day. First thing that I did was go to Google Maps in Ivins. And, it's pretty clear to see the amount of people that actually have these. There's multiple homes that have been permitted. And kind of like Susie said, after 5 months of kind of battling this when many other people already have it installed is very frustrating. And so I just urge you guys to, hop on Google Maps and go to the satellite view, and which is a little creepy, but you can just see people's yards, And so you can just see where these solar panels are. And I lived in, that house for 15 years where they're looking to get that mounted. And it is so far away from both of the roads, it is totally invisible while you're driving along. So I just hope you guys will kind of, move this in their favor. And if you would like me to email you screenshots from Google Maps satellite view of everyone else's ground-mounted solar panels, I am more than happy to do so. So that was my comment, and I appreciate you giving me a call, Mayor Hart.
You bet. So you can hear us via Zoom, right?
Well, not anymore, because now I'm on the phone.
But if I hang up the phone, you are able to hear the continuing discussion, is that right?
Yes, if you gave me like 15 seconds to get back in.
Okay, that we will give you. Thank you for your comment. Any others? All right, seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing, and the council will now move forward to item 5D. They will discuss and consider approval of ordinance number 2022-04, an ordinance of Ivins City, Utah, amending Chapter 16 regarding ground-mounted solar and allowable uses. So-
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
As if things go as I think they are, if you adopt this ordinance tonight, there's no question that there will be a permit issued tomorrow. There is something in the zoning ordinance that says if it's not addressed, it's not permitted. This was not previously addressed, but has been now. And so if we focus on the text of the ordinance and we can agree on its passage tonight, then this becomes a moot point. A permit can be issued tomorrow.
My question is, so it'd be one thing if we had several just illegal installations out there, but we actually have authorized, permitted installations out there that were not controlled by any ordinance. And my question is, since the application came during a period of time where we had no ordinance, are they even really subject to whatever language comes out in this ordinance?
Mayor, Dale and Mayor, that was my question between the dark black ink and the red ink. We don't have a current ordinance, correct?
We have what you see.
Which means, but it's
Correct.
effective.
We do not have a current
Right, so the
ordinance
red is
proposed.
a proposed from what Mike had kind of come up with in the black ink.
And the prior approvals were prior building officials.
Yeah.
And so subject to their code interpretations.
Yeah.
That's all I
Mayor.
can say about that.
Mayor,
Yes, Lance?
I'm going to disagree with what as saying there was no ordinance, because there is.
Get close to them. Can you hear him?
Yeah, I'm saying if you read this, what's in black, it is electrical piece of equipment. There is an ordinance there, and it already states what it needs to do. Now, they should have still been issued a permit based on this ordinance. And this ordinance talks about screening and mechanical equipment, because it talks right there. All zoning districts, grade-mounted electrical service equipment, air conditioning, heating, cooling, venting equipment, swimming pool equipment, pumps, heaters, propane tanks, all other mechanical equipment shall be painted the same color as the exterior color of the adjacent building and screened from surrounding properties and streets by landscape materials or enclosed within a building. And I think he said that he's gonna dig it in and he can landscape it, and that's how we do with our parking. When we talked about our parking for months about how we're gonna screen it from people, that's what we come up with, and I think this already states it.
But, Mr. Mayor,
Yes, please.
as I understand the interpretation, paragraph 1 did not address solar. Paragraph 2 is the only paragraph that addressed solar specifically. And it referenced roof-mounted solar, not ground-mounted solar. We can sit here and debate prior building officials' interpretations all night, but I think from our previous discussions and from what the appels are asking for, I think everyone is on board with moving forward with ground-mounted solar. And so can we focus our discussion on moving this ordinance to its fruition and adopt it tonight? So there's absolutely no question that in the future and tomorrow, permits for ground-mounted solar can be issued. And there's no question about that.
Okay, so the key issue is masking, right? Is that everybody's understanding here? And the Appels are proposing to dig this in, I think, 2 feet, if Mr. Appel,
It's already down.
already sunk down, and then berm. So, sorry, procedurally, I need to have you speak into the mic, so come on forward.
From that first picture that you guys seen, looking at her garage, there's a big bush tree sitting right there. You can't even see, I could go back there and stand, I'm 6'2". You couldn't see me from the road. And that, the proposed solar system, like she said, it's gonna be anywhere from 2 feet to 3 feet off the ground in the front, and it's gonna slope up to 6 to 6.5 feet.
Yeah.
You will never see that from the road.
So that's
Ever.
screened. Right?
Well, and I'm agreeing that there's a screen, but we're writing an ordinance for everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
And all along, I know how their house lays and how their lot is, so
Yeah,
when he
and
said
other
that,
proposed residential units that want ground mount solar, yeah, I mean, take some of your shade screen or something, we can figure
Not
a
shade
way to
screen,
do
but
that,
yeah.
but a lot of times you start shading your panels, you lose
No, right,
production.
sure, right.
So
Well,
that's
but-
another thing you guys might want to take into
Yeah.
consideration, is the more you shade that, the less production. So, and that's what the customer doesn't want to lose production, they want to produce as much as they can and offset that power bill.
Absolutely.
Thank
And so, Mike, the concern for you is a definition of what screening is and when it's required?
Yes, that's where we're at in this discussion.
So we've already sort of separated into acre lot, smaller lots, whatever. Most smaller lots are in walled environments already, so a backyard system within block walls is essentially screened, right?
Yes.
And they've chosen a different approach with digging in and berming, which is also a legitimate form of screening. Do you need this ordinance to define various types of allowable screening?
No, what's important in this ordinance is that it now says ground mount unit frames, whereas the paragraphs above just talks about roof mounted. Then that makes it allowed use. The details of it, I just try to replicate other places in our ordinance that talked about screening mechanical equipment. I look at this as an accessory structure, but here it's not an accessory structure anymore. It is actually a ground mount use.
So
And
the-
also mechanical equipment.
So the 8 feet is an issue, right, with the council? And your system is extending to approximately 6.5 feet, I heard you say, right? That's as tall as that one gets. Yes.
Mayor,
Dennis.
maybe to kind of move this along, and I'll put a stake in the ground, and then we all can build on that, okay? It strikes me that we've had 0 complaints about some ground-mounted solar, that we've had, I've never seen it. And it's only because of this discussion that there's been any feedback about it, as we've really gone far and wide to search out photos, and we appreciate those emails that we received. I think less is better. So my opinion is as follows, like if this were to become a motion, looking at paragraph 4, ground mount unit frame, structural elements, conduit, and electrical panels shall be painted to match fencing or primary structure colors if these elements can be seen from the street frontage. I assume that is not going to interfere with any kind of warranty or anything like that. And if that's true, then leave that. The next thing, I don't know, based on the comment from the electrician, if this next sentence is applicable. You know,
I haven't seen anything that isn't black on black, at least of late, right?
okay,
Yeah, I mean, most of your panels now are black on black, unless you're a commercial style panel, you'll still see the silver frame, but everything now is black.
okay.
But even with the silver frame, it's almost invisible because of the sea of black in its environment, right?
Then the next sentence, if fencing is used, it shall be approved of fencing materials in this ordinance. I don't know if this is the right word, or if it's just approved fencing materials, period. And then I think we we don't address the next paragraph. We're silent on, they'll be screened by solid fencing 6 feet high in accordance to allowed fencing heights in this ordinance. I don't want to do anything that would, to me, it's more of an eyesore on the roof, right, than, on the lower part. So we wouldn't want to dissuade anyone from, to have an incentive to do some solar if they have the property to do it. Ground mount systems shall be built in approved setbacks and within buildable areas. I think that's an acceptable statement. And ground mounts can only be 8 feet tall above grade unless approved by Plan Commission. That sounds reasonable. And then you have the exception. This is really applicable to, just as it says, ground mount solar screen is not required on residential lots 1 acre or bigger. And then if we have evidence or to suggest that things are getting out of control, I think then we come back and it can be addressed. But the fact, I guess I'm resting on the fact that none of us here have observed anything that's been offensive in the city, nor did we even know all these people who have had permits even have it.
Well, Mayor?
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't say none of us, because I had the one out in Padre that sits there. You got this beautiful house sitting here, and then it's just sitting out there. There's no plants or anything around it. It just sits there. And the dust comes up, people complain. I have had people complain about it, so it's not like we don't. But I think what's critical here is we treat it just like we do any other equipment up here, that it has to, I don't want to say 6-foot fence. I don't think their house needs a 6-foot block around it or an 8-foot block. It needs to say something that will be screened like we do everything else, and it can be screened. We have a screening already in our parking thing. We have it just has to have some level of screening, and maybe it can stick above that of some number. I don't know what that is. But I think to say, it's like everything, it just dominoes real quick once it's done. And so
Okay, fair comment, yeah.
today it might not be, you weren't aware of it, but some were aware of it. And so-
Mayor?
Well, we have, half a dozen systems out there.
Yeah,
Over 25 years of solar emerging.
yeah.
We're not going to have a run-on ground-mounted solar. That's just a fact.
Well, I've
So-
heard people are asking for it more, so.
okay.
So I wouldn't say that.
But and Dennis, you hit on this. It says if fencing is used, so that doesn't dispel the potential to use a berm or any other. It's just saying if fencing is used, then it needs to be something that complies with the fencing ordinance. That's reasonable, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it should be screened, and then you can use fencing, you can use berming with landscaping, and we can pull out that little, there's a little diagram in our book that tells about screening, parking, and other items.
Mayor?
Yes.
So the sentence here is, that if fencing is used, it shall be of approved fencing materials in this ordinance. I think it should just be of approved fencing materials,
Yeah.
because that's actually in a
Period.
different section.
I agree.
And then, and so as long as we're saying it's screened by what, as Lance said, berms, landscaping, digging it down a foot or two, then it's screened. We're good to go. I don't know that we really have to allow that that the ground mount systems could be 8 feet tall. Maybe we say 6 feet above grade. You're going down a bit. You're going to be a little over 6 feet, but, and then I don't agree with giving the planning commission the right to allow taller installations.
I agree.
No.
So just make those changes, and we're good to go.
Excuse me, Mayor.
Do you mind if I,
Sorry.
yes, please, go ahead.
And then I think we take out that last sentence, that it's
Yeah.
not required on, it's just, take out that it's not required on an acre or more, because
No.
they're gonna dig it in, and so I think you have to have some kind of screening, but it's, whether it's a plant, whether it's landscaping, whatever, but I wouldn't
Yeah.
give them an exception just because it's a bigger lot.
Because we're not forcing a block wall,
Not
which is
forcing
going
a
to be
wall.
expensive.
If we were forcing a wall, I think that's
Yeah.
crazy, but I mean, this, yeah, so I think you take that out, and then,
Well, and they're screening it just simply
Yeah,
because
they're
of their
fine.
property. That's a
Right.
big property,
Well,
you're never gonna see it. But another property that's 1.1 acres, it might be highly visible. And so we need the ordinance to give us the right to screen it, but
Okay.
I'm sure you're good to go.
Yes, ma'am.
So, thank you. So when we look at the picture of the systems that you guys took photos of, the framework is not it's not a really sizable type of structure. It's just
No,
like,
it's we usually make our framework out of 1.5 or 2-inch rigid conduit. So, I mean, you're only, 2 inches
Like that?
big, yeah. And then we dig the poles in, we cement them in, and then we build our framework off of that for the solar. So to get, our solar systems usually will never be more than 6.5 feet in the back, just because we put everything on anywhere between a 15 to a 30-degree slope for production. So that's where we get our 6. So usually they're never taller than 6.5 feet in the back.
So
yes,
I'm
go
sorry. That sort of brings up that first sentence. So again, if we're doing full screening, are we really concerned about painting
We're not.
the framing?
No, 'cause
exactly right. That's what I was driving for.
A lot of the
And
equipment we
even if
can't
some of it
paint.
could be seen,
Right.
it
The
is,
screening
it's
takes
not,
care of it.
I mean, I can go put a swing set in my backyard with bright red posts on it, right? I mean, I think that might be,
Our neighborhood.
kind of straining at gnats here. So
So strike the whole
you and I were talking at the same time, so now I'm gonna listen to you.
I can't remember what I was gonna
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're at that age too, huh?
There is one thing I found about ground mounted solar is the rats love the wires, so that's one of the downfalls.
Yeah, that's why a lot of times we do suggest you put,
But you need to put they will eat them, so,
netting. We
Yeah.
usually try to put netting underneath it to help keep the
yeah.
critters and stuff away from them, so.
So am I hearing you say then that so let's just begin at the beginning of paragraph 4. The structural elements, conduit, electrical panels, and blah, blah. There's no, I don't think there ought to be a requirement that those have to be painted to match. Does anybody think that should be there?
If we're screening,
You're screening it, yeah.
Mayor,
If you're screening, yes.
can I make an attempt to simplify this?
Yes.
Hey, man, if you could do that,
Based
you're my
upon
hero
your
of the night.
discretion. First of all, one clarifying question. Well, I'll let you define that later. Why don't we say ground mount units are an allowed use in residential zones, but the question will be what residential zones, so be thinking about that. Period. Ground mounts shall be screened and built in approved setbacks, period. Ground mounts can only be whatever feet tall above grade, period.
I say we start with 6'6". He says that most of what he
Okay,
does is
so it
6'6".
can only be 6.5 feet tall above grade, period. You only have those few sentences. Does it?
Does that
so
work
you
for
have what,
everybody?
screened?
Huh?
Oh, it's permitted
There-
use, and it's
it's-
screened, and it's 6'6".
It's a permitted use, it's an allowed use, but in certain zones. So we'll have to define what zones, but
So
in
what zones
residential
would-
zones,
All residential?
Residential.
all residential
Yeah.
zones.
I
Okay,
mean,
that's
some lots
easy.
are just gonna be too small to even
Yeah,
do
if-
it.
if
but-
they wanna do it.
But if they wanna try to do it,
Okay, ground mount units.
Are allowed.
Ground mount solar units are allowed in all residential zones.
Shall be screened
Ground mounts shall be screened
and built.
and built in approved setbacks, period.
Yep.
What,
Ground mounts can only be 6.5 feet tall above grade, period. That's it.
or can't be
The
more than
paragraph 4.
6.5.
Oh, yeah, more than 6.5.
Mayor?
Yeah, because I've never had them, unless a customer requests, we want them at a taller slope to get more production, but that's.
Well, here's the deal. We don't allow 8-foot walls. So if
Right.
we're gonna have somebody screen something, needs to be within sort of screening elevation, right? Go ahead.
Mayor, I'm gonna, as I thought about our statement about where they should be allowed, because we don't wanna get, when we say residential zones, that's high-density residential, then that leads into a whole nother level because of.
Single-family residential
single
zones?
Single-family
I think that's a good
residential.
idea too.
Okay, in single-family residential zones. Would that work to simplify this paragraph 4?
Show 'em a thumbs up, and then we'll go for a vote. I see 3 or more, I see 4 thumbs.
I still have a question on screening. Can you show me the ordinance that defines screening? Because here's my concern. We decided in the meeting that screening could mean lowering the grade, but that's not in the ordinance. And so then I come up against, now you need to do some additional screening. Does the lower elevation, is
Yeah,
that
that-
included in the ordinance?
So that's a good point.
So
May-
I don't have to come back here.
Maybe we
Just
need
trying
to leave in there if fencing is used.
Or-
So you said that shall be screened.
Mayor?
Yes.
I think I've got, so instead of saying if fencing is used, maybe say screening can be accomplished by lower, going below grade, by fencing, berms,
Berms with
landscaping.
Berm and landscape.
The only reason that we might not want to do that is that there'll be other ideas out there, right? If we say that it's required to be screened, and then we say if fencing is the
Yeah.
selected type of screening, then it has to match the fencing order.
We do talk about screening in several other places of the code, and it does talk about that it's.
What it
for
means.
A parking lot, for example,
Yeah.
can be lower. So it's screened by berming, landscaping, it can be fencing, but it notes that it can be screened in a variety of different ways. And so I think this is sufficient to say that it must be screened.
Although, Mike, the way you said it that wasn't very much verbiage. You basically said.
That's true.
It can be bermed, landscaped,
Fenced,
Or-
and
Or
below
otherwise
grade.
screened.
Yeah, if we could include the below
Yes,
grade,
yeah.
because otherwise I have to
Yeah.
landscape berm and do the below
Right.
grade as well.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, if I'm interpreting screen, if you put it below grade, you screen.
Yeah,
It's
it's screened.
automatic.
I know,
That's
I'm
a-
just trying to eliminate
She just
the
wants to make sure it's-
interpretation.
Like,
because-
another example of screening is if you build out over a ridge, it talks about berming up, and if you can't see over 6 feet. So these are all things we've talked about.
So we can add 2 words, dug in, bermed,
Landscape.
Well,
lands-
berm and landscape together. You can't just berm, you gotta landscape and berm. When you put dirt out, you gotta landscape it back.
but you can do it without a berm and still landscape it and have it screened. So in a way, they're separate.
So why don't you want to come back to us week after week for the next 5 months?
I need a break.
So Dale?
I'll probably be back again for something.
I think the fact that we have that elsewhere in our ordinances, maybe to go to that level of clarification, because it'd be easy to,
Yes, I have no objection to, offering some examples of that and to specify that it can be dug down.
is that enough for you?
Or berming with landscaping.
Or fencing, and then if if fencing is used, then whatever that says.
Well, I think.
So if we have a run on it, we have problems, then we can fix it.
Okay, I'm giving the floor to Mike.
If I'm listening to everybody correctly, screen doesn't mean you cannot see it. Screen means that they went to an effort to make it so it matches the surrounding. So my interpretation will be of screened, that it's not completely invisible, but something was done to make it look like it was mitigated, the look was mitigated.
Not in your
That's good.
face.
So Dale, do you have that in legal form?
Well, I would ask that you move on it tonight and approve it, and we'll get the language of paragraph 4 modified so that you can sign a modified version of this ordinance. But
But they can get their permit tomorrow.
yes,
Okay, all right.
that's why I would
Okay.
like the motion tonight, to
Okay.
approve it as amended.
As amended, okay.
I'm going to Councilmember Johnson.
I just want to make a public comment. I know this has been a frustration to the Appels and to others and I regret that for you. However, I do want to thank Mike for all his hard work. I know that not having a formal ordinance where it specifies that has been difficult, and I think he's done a really good job with other things in the past since he's been here of trying to clarify and make things better for our community. And so even though this has been a frustration, thank you, Mike, for your hard work.
Look what you've done for everybody else behind you. I hope that makes you feel good. Okay, is there a motion?
Can I
coming?
ask a question? Just, so I feel good about what we discuss and will support. Can we just hone in on the all residential versus single family? So for example, let's just play the card of affordable housing. And I'm gonna build a project that's townhomes, and I'm gonna advertise to the people that I want to come rent, hey, guess what? You rent here, you don't have a power bill, and that's gonna save you $200 a month.
But you don't own it.
What do you mean?
You don't own the property, so it becomes a whole nother legal issue.
What do you mean I don't own the property? Say I develop.
Apartment, you
No,
don't
I'm,
own
so
it.
I'm saying, say I built a townhome project
Yeah.
and I maintain the ownership. And now I'm the developer and I own it and I'm gonna rent it out to people.
Yes, but they can sell at any point in time, so that's your dilemma.
I'm going to Councilmember Johnson.
I think the point with that is that if it was high residential, those would be done on the rooftop. And we're talking specifically about ground mount
It wouldn't fit.
being
I
in the
actually don't see
residential.
it happening.
Because of the setbacks and everything.
All of that, and I don't know
Yeah.
I don't know a high-density developer that's going to invest in solar panels for little kids to run around and throw dirt on.
Good point. Oh, there we go.
On your high-density residential, there is a lot of solar on stuff like that, and what they usually do is they put it on their carports. So
So it's elevated, rooftop.
so it's gonna be
Exactly.
elevated ground mount
Exactly.
to sum it pretty much. So for anybody that has questions like that, it would be an elevated ground mount, would go on top of the carports or on the.
Which we would call rooftop.
Yeah,
So, okay,
I don't,
This.
yeah.
did you have more?
no, we're good.
Oh,
Okay.
one more little thing. Are we boxing someone in at 6.5 feet? Do we care if it's 7 feet? Doesn't matter.
Well, the point I'm making is he's saying that, and this is a professional that does this all the
Yeah.
time, that 6.5 is adequate, and I'm making the point that we don't allow walls higher than 6 feet.
That makes sense.
So if we're saying you gotta screen it and then allowing it to be 8 feet, then you got 2 feet of it that's not screened.
Perfect.
Okay?
Good, okay.
I think we can tolerate the 6 inches.
Well, they're digging it in, so.
Yeah,
So do we settle on all residential zones or all single?
Single
Single family.
family, 6.5 foot, if you're gonna do a fence.
okay.
Okay, go ahead,
If
Lance.
you don't like the language, we'll amend it
Adele.
in a future meeting. But somebody make a motion.
So
Let's
moved.
let these poor people,
So moved.
as amended.
As amended.
I'll second.
So what I'm hearing out of that is that ordinance number 2022-04, an ordinance of Ivins City, Utah, amending chapter 16 regarding ground-mounted solar and allowable uses, you are making the motion to approve that as amended.
Correct.
And there is a second on that motion.
Correct.
Roll call vote. Councilmember Scott.
Aye.
Councilmember Mayer.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Murphy.
Aye.
And Councilmember Anderson.
Aye.
Okay, we want to see you bright and early, 8 o'clock. I bet you will.
Good work.
Thank you so much. Okay, discussion of potential action items. We're continuing the discussion on the ordinance adopting and implementing regulations for landscaping and water conservation for developing land in Ivins City. You're all aware that Santa Clara has adopted that. And Carrie, thanks for sending out a copy of that ordinance. That was actually interesting to read through. I believe that we have a couple of things that are unique to Ivins City that we need to pay special attention to. The one that I think is really critical is that we have got some luxury resort development that's going to be our kind of financial well-being for the future. That requires modest bubbler-type water features, mostly for the effect of the sound. And I'm proposing that we make a provision that given given their ability to demonstrate the use of other water efficient techniques, if you will, fixtures, appliances, this, that, and the other, that we have a prescriptive, that we make it possible for them to, in a prescriptive way, to put in place these sorts of things that are essential, I'm told, in, for example, a spa setting and that sort of thing.
Mr. Mayor, that is why, actually, both ordinances had some version of it, both the Water Conservancy District and Santa Clara's. One was a cumulative total, one was a per water feature total, but of 50 gallons that was mentioned was to, when I was at that meeting, I specifically raised that, saying we have spas that want small water features by the rooms or you know, at least in the spa to kind of set that, give it that setting and environment. And so we could either address it there if you wanted to modify that or do kind of a prescriptive right type of thing as you've suggested. But there was some attempt by the Water Conservancy District to address that concern.
Yeah, I mean, a standard hotel, folks, this is not an issue. But with what we have happening here, it is an issue. And we're looking at potentially another one at some point in time in Cayenta that will also be a retreat type of environment, heavy emphasis on spa, and I'm sure that's going to be a need there as well.
Yeah.
I just think we need to be careful to make sure we're not shooting ourselves in the foot.
Right.
And then the other issues that I made note of from our earlier discussion is we talked briefly about the amount of yard area. And one interesting idea that came out, and I don't know if it was in our discussion or if I heard it afterwards, is that swimming pools essentially are the same as grass in terms of evaporation. And so the concept was if you're gonna have a pool, that counts against your yard, your turf area. I thought that was a good idea.
I'd like to, Mayor,
Please.
I mean, I'd like to find where that information come from, because I had a swimming pool, and if you put a cover
You
on-
need to talk into that mic.
I said, I'd like to make sure that's not just information that someone's Googled and it's not.
Hearsay?
Yeah, because, I mean, you put a cover on it, it reduces the amount of evaporation that you get. And someone said it'll get the same evaporation. I have a hard time understanding that
Mayor?
concept.
To Lance's point, I thought early on the Conservancy Districts, one of their little write-ups was pools would count, you know, the square footage of the pool would count towards the landscape area unless it has a pool cover. If it has a pool cover, it doesn't count.
That sounds right.
Mayor?
Well, and one
But
possible, the district was actually going towards, you have to cover your pool. That doesn't mean necessarily an automatic pool cover, it could be something that's folded out, but that's what they were hoping that the municipalities would adopt as something that is restrictive on that, because it's open pools that are the biggest offenders in terms of
Right.
of evaporation, right?
Mayor?
Yes.
I mean, I have a pool with an automatic cover, and in the summer, sometimes if I leave it open, that's the only time that the autofill goes on. Otherwise, I never hear, the autofill never goes
Yeah.
on when the pool's covered.
So-
So I don't think it evaporates when you have those
So you think
electric covers.
that's a good,
I think that counting the pool, if somebody has a cover, I don't know that you're getting that evaporation as they're saying, if there's a cover
So,
on it. I
Mayor?
don't see that.
yes.
So I guess the question is, will our version of the ordinance require pool covers on all new construction? Or will it allow for pools without covers?
Are you suggesting that if a pool has a cover, it does not count against the turf area?
That's right.
If it does not, it does count against the turf
Yes.
area?
Yeah.
That's reasonable.
Yeah, I think so.
And then they can decide whether they do a cover.
Mayor?
Yes.
One of the things I'm having, and I understand the philosophy behind it, but I'm trying to look of equity. You know, I say if you have a lot size of 6,000 square feet, you can only have this much grass. Why is there any difference between I mean, if you pay the same impact fee, you pay the same water bill, why do we care what size the lot is, I guess? Why are we saying if you have a bigger lot, you can have more grass?
The district is hoping that's not the way we go. They're hoping we just set a maximum
Yeah, and to me.
turf area.
To me, that's fair, because just because I have a little lot doesn't mean I shouldn't have much, I pay the same bill unless there's a difference in bills. And I don't, by understanding, we all pay the same impact fee, we pay the same water bill.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. I was just gonna, Mayor. You know, we're gonna have more discussion on this, is that right? This is just, we're continuing our discussion. We're not acting on this tonight, are we?
Well, we could, I mean, we have a draft that we're making amendments to, but just to point out a couple, I brought up my objection to the 0.6 gallons of loss in a recirculating hot water system. I think that number's too high. That ought to be less than 0.5, and I'd recommend 0.3 gallons. And then we, on, what page is this? Anyway, it's line 244 that has to do with car washes. Am I remembering right that the council said just no car washes, period? No new car washes?
I think we've got one by Harmon's. I think we're okay.
Okay. Good.
That even
That count against their water use, right?
Mayor, is that even a permitted use in any of our use tables? I
don't
went to
know,
look.
Dale.
Yes, it is.
I did.
Yeah.
The type of car wash for Lightfoots, but it does talk about mechanical, something mechanical. And the planning commission was also discussing noise. So the vacuums would create a noise, but nothing compared to the dryers, the automated car washes. So planning commission was leaning towards leaving it in. But that's going to be refined by you and this proposed ordinance. And in answer to Dennis's question, this is not on for action tonight. Both the wording of the agenda item, and we don't have it in our ordinance form. We don't have an ordinance yet. This is a draft from the Conservancy District and what Santa Clara has passed. So it's just on for discussion tonight. So this will continue to your next meeting.
And the other one that the council was wondering about is Mister systems, whether they should be allowed at all or not, or if.
It's taking away one energy and giving it to another, because a misting system cools your, so we gotta always be careful.
We have to be
go.
careful. I think it's okay.
Do you know, do you know how much water one uses? I don't even know that.
I mean, that would be interesting to find out, what do those things actually use? Do you know?
No, I don't, but we could look into it, but we usually don't see a mister on a final. It would
Yeah.
have to be something through enforcement after a certificate of occupancy is issued typically.
Yeah, it becomes a nightmare.
That's a tough one to enforce, you're saying.
Yes. Yeah, and just a question on the swimming pool covers. There's a UL listed one, and then the energy code talks about a vapor barrier. I think defining for enforcement what kind of cover we're talking about is also important in this ordinance.
So
If it's a UL listed one that meets the safety and also the evaporation requirements, those are okay. The one that's the vapor barrier that's required by the energy code for when you condition your pool is probably not something that you guys are looking at.
So the point he's making, and by the way, the cover that he's talking about only works on a rectangular pool.
Right.
Yes.
So, but here's the point. You can get these sort of fold-out moisture barrier type covers, right? That nobody uses. Mike, have you ever thought of going out there and trying to
I should find out about it.
find a piece of plastic to unfold around that pool? So, Mike, I think you're right, that we ought to specify that is the type of pool cover that does not make your pool count against the area of turf, because the others are not used. People do not unfold them and put them out, so it's essentially an open pool.
And I think what's important here is the safety thing doesn't concern this ordinance, that concerns another ordinance. So when we're talking about it, let's just, it's for evaporation. So,
Correct.
and I agree, and in Ivins, if anyone's ever had a pool, you want to cover.
So it would be just an automatic pool cover. It wouldn't necessarily be UL for this, for the sake of this ordinance, but it would be one that you turn a key and it self-closes.
Yes, yeah. And I think that's what you guys are looking for.
Yes.
And that basically does away with odd-shaped pools unless you could unless there's covers for it, which I've never seen, so.
They do offer them.
Yeah.
I've even provided one. I've never seen it on. And that's why I think maybe that turns into an open pool and counts against your turf.
Yeah, they have them where they actually mount them on the concrete.
On the concrete,
So it
basically.
but you're always stumbling over it when you're.
Yeah, oh, yeah. Those are the things I had redlined from our earlier discussion. Mike, you've been looking deeply into this. Where are you on?
You want to spend another hour on this?
Sure. We're here.
Oh, well.
Oh, wait a minute, I'm not seeing lots of enthusiasm.
I'll just toss out a couple of things. So Santa Clara's ordinance had some exceptions. One of them was that they will permit agricultural, horticultural, and gardening uses, including fruit trees in any zone. And a lot of people, or some people, have made comments about that, saying they like that idea. Of course, that's going to use more water, but you're growing your own food.
Right.
That's a plus. And so when you talk about the grass area, I like that idea of, even though it's going to consume water, you're doing it for food consumption to
Well, you're-
separate that.
You're trading resources.
And you're shading.
again.
right.
And you're creating, and
You're-
that's
you're-
right,
you're-
you're creating.
Natural cooling,
yeah.
basically. And by the way, the district is all in favor of trees. We are not going down the path, we as a conservancy district are not going down the path that other southwest communities have where it's all gravel.
No.
And then you have a 10-degree hotter environment than you did before. And so trees are actually a positive in the district's mind too.
And if you like, for the next meeting, what I could do, so I've compared the two ordinances, and I'm not saying that one's better than the other where there's differences, but what I could do is at least I could merge in what Santa Clara has added or taken out, so you're just looking at one document and just seeing everything and decide, yeah, pick A or pick B, or
And there's
invent
St.
something
George's
new.
draft.
Oh, great. Okay, so I'll incorporate that one too. Thanks so much.
So Dale, the other things that, do you envision in this ordinance that we include language having to do with will-serve letters and we're going to have to dig into some other ordinances when we start defining, when water entitlement occurs and so forth, right?
Right, I would see that as being in a different ordinance. This is governing conservation and the use of water, not,
Rights.
not when you obtain a right to build based upon a will-serve letter. Or to
Mayor.
pursue a subdivision based upon a will-serve letter.
And this affidavit that has been adopted already by St. George, right? The developer signing an affidavit at the time of filing.
I don't know if that's, I haven't
Do
seen.
you remember
St.
that as a
George's-
part of that discussion?
I haven't seen St. George's ordinance.
So they're
That was
basically.
discussed.
Yeah, they're basically requiring that the developer sign an affidavit recognizing that there may not be water available at the time of the application. That's
Oh,
part of their
yes.
application process.
Yes,
But that's also a different ordinance, right?
yes.
So, but keep that in mind, would you? Because I think we need to address that as soon as we get done with this.
Yes.
And hopefully by that time, the district will have this policy worked out as to how they're going to allocate the ERUs that remain, and then we're gonna have to have some discussions about how long is a final plat valid, do they have to reapply for water after a year? And there are a lot of technical questions that are gonna come along about how we're gonna handle the distribution of what available water there is. Okay. So Mike, sounds like you're coming back with research. Bless your heart. Are we all content to have him do that? That's what I thought.
Hey, Mayor, would we be able to one day get what I'm finding is been asking people their water bills. And I'd like to know for our conversations when we're talking about water conservation and when we start talking about rates, I'd like to know what different areas, we don't need people, we just need areas of the community, because some are using I know where I lived in Cliff Rose, my water bill was 2,000 to 3,000 gallons a month. And it's just, and we're talking equity here, and what can we really live on? Most water bills where there's landscape is usually between 8,000 and 12,000 a month with a pool, okay? And that's if there's not a lot of grass. And so it'd be curious for me to understand what areas and how much grass is in these areas so we could make a real decision instead of just,
Yeah,
you know.
okay, I hear what you're saying.
Chuck loves me, but he's going on vacation anyway.
Got a science fair.
I have a science fair project I could share with you. Dennis saw it.
Yeah, I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
And also the county's also done some studies as well.
But I'm talking about, you got water bills every day.
The science fair project I'm talking about actually anonymized a bunch of data and identified subdivisions, so this was the average use for
Sounds
this
like your son
subdivision.
did
So if you go to your science fairs, you're gonna get what you need.
I'm a little bit
After
past
that.
that right now. No, what I'm saying is maybe you've already done that, but it'd be curious to see.
If you wanted to add some other subdivisions, we could maybe even look at that too, because we can.
I mean, what I'm getting at is everyone pays the same water bill, they pay the same impact fee. Now, there is people that will, if they want bigger water, or more water, more water, they will pay a higher impact fee. And then when they use that water, our tables say they have to pay more water. We're creating that ability for them to do it, so.
Well,
it's
and
just
Mayor, so, yeah, just to tag on to that, what would be great to see from, and maybe this is what's in your science fair project, is not just different areas of the city, but different types of uses. So what is the water use in the typical townhome development? What is the water use in 10,000 square foot single-family development? Or large lot development, just to see these types of uses, because then again, when we're looking at somebody coming in saying, well, I want to build this type of housing, it's going to be easier to at least estimate what kind of water consumption are we likely looking at here, because I think it's going to vary quite a bit, but maybe I'm wrong, maybe it'll all be about the same.
I think the district is actually moving towards, and this isn't gonna happen overnight. So they already have a different rate for multifamily because the use is definitely lower. I mean, what he was saying was the truth. And I think you're gonna see different lot sizes also at some point in time being given different impact fee amounts.
Okay.
So, I mean.
And would count differently than for how much water do we have left based on these applications, right?
The big deal is what is the name of the metering system, Chuck, that allows you basically to track everything? And we are in the process of doing that, right?
Well, we got to budget it. We've been asking for grants for it so far, but we may want to just consider budgeting. It's called automated meter infrastructure, where we'd install antennas throughout the city so that we can, by radio, collect data it would be on a daily basis, but it's actually collecting hourly data.
And it tells you if you
Isn't
got
that
a
an
leak.
early warning system if you've got a leak?
Right, so we would get the data daily, and if we knew somebody was, or not knew, but potentially had a leak, we could send them an email and say, hey.
I think that needs to be part of our conservation plan
Yeah.
personally.
Does that let the consumer access that information as well?
Absolutely, there'd be a portal, they could log into it, they could look at their water usage, absolutely. that's
It
all part of
actually, they set up different parameters, and if it actually sees it using more than it normally does, then it notifies them that there's a problem.
Yeah.
So you set up that parameter, and as you get used to it, the parameters become narrower and more exact.
How many million is that?
I think it was only like $500,000.
Oh,
It's a good word to put in front of any
Yes.
number you throw out there, only.
That's nothing in today's,
Right?
in today's world, that's nothing, though.
My recollection is about $500,000. Maybe it was $750,000, but
Oh,
slip that in the budget, see what,
Yeah.
see what Dale does.
A half, 3/4, what's the difference?
Thank you.
yeah.
Okay, so I think we're about to leave this, but these issues that we've brought up tonight, let's contemplate those and discuss them further. And then, Mike, thank you for what research you'll bring back with the comparisons. I think that's useful too.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Mayor, can I just kind of and in all that we do, let's be sure we're not penalizing families as we look at what we're doing. So we need to keep that in the forefront of our minds.
Yeah, the line of demarcation is, what we're doing here is for new construction. And there are issues like the amount of grass and so forth that would impact families, right? But the line of demarcation is that existing residents, if they're going to make changes, it's going to be with incentivized help from the district, right? And we're not going to penalize people
Right.
for having complied with the requirements at the time they bought a home or built one.
Or if they do an application for changing their house. There's levels in there that certain things,
Yeah,
if they do an
actually, you bet.
application, that's when, all our other rules are driven that way. When you do an application, you're asking for a change. It's like the mobile homes, they can't do new, but they can repair. But if they put an application in to do a new mobile home, it's not allowed. So the only thing I gotta say out of this whole water thing is I will not put a low-flow toilet in any building because you always have to call a plumber way too much.
Well, and they're flushing it twice.
And you flush it
Exactly.
twice.
It's just, it's one of those stills
Yeah.
that sounds good, but it's not working.
Yep.
Well, the newer versions, they actually have some at 0.8 gallons that work great. But it's based on an air pressure thing, not volume of water.
Yeah.
That's why it sounds like a rocket taking off when you push the handle, but.
So,
Anyway,
okay.
great things out there technologically. Dale, have we gone far enough with this?
I'm satisfied.
Okay.
He just wants to get out of here.
All right, let's jump to the consent agenda. Any corrections, additions?
Oh, for the minutes, you mean? No.
Perfect again, Carrie. Motion to approve?
Mr. Mayor, I
Yes.
move we approve the consent agenda.
Second?
Second.
Moved and seconded, we approve the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Council reports, beginning with Councilmember Anderson.
None.
Thank you. Councilmember Murphy?
None.
Councilmember Johnson?
No report.
Councilmember Mayer?
No report.
And Councilmember Scott?
I do have a short report. I had a meeting with the Snow Canyon State Park group last week. And at the last meeting, Dennis asked me to check on a couple of things with the park. One, about getting a little more parking inside the park, and then maybe better access at the entrance for people who are, that have passes. And so Kristen said that they put out a bid for adding 50 parking spaces in the park. They didn't get a single bidder. And so they're going to go out to rebid, hopefully again this year, as long as they can get the money from the state for that. They also want to put another 60 parking spaces up by Highway 18 at the top end of the park. And she said that, yeah, she wants to come back into the city council soon and see if she can move the entrance gate about 1,000 feet into Ivins, which would be about, halfway from where it is now to where Vermilion Cliffs starts. And then that would give her extra lanes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
I had a Zoom meeting with a young graduate student from Utah State University by the name of Logan Hall. And he has a team that is doing a thesis or a project at any rate. They have selected Ivins City as a model city to use in doing a community lead. I didn't even know there was such a thing. So you can get LEED certification on a building, right? And the same thing happens in a community. So this team is actually working somewhat with Chuck already, but looking at things like our night sky ordinance, our parks and recreation opportunities, even how we drain our roads. And once again, Kayenta is going to make us look really good because all the water goes into the earth. And so we'll over the next 3 months, we'll be working with them, and they're going to come back with these LEED recommendations that I think will be actually interesting for us to look at, whether we adopt any of them or not. We had a rather significant meeting with the Water Conservancy District last night, and the concept of us knowing what we have in the way of development approvals and what the available water is now the main subject of discussion. I brought up my plan for the water to be distributed based on population, and then city councils can determine how they're going to allocate that. And so that discussion is going to be ongoing probably for the next couple of months. But at least we're headed towards I think, a responsible resolution to our current situation. Dale?
Just want to let you know that I will not be here for the next meeting. I will be out of town with my family.
I'll be out as well.
Okay. We'll miss you.
Is Zoom still an option for us to join if we so desire?
If you notify us, if there's not a public hearing, we don't always do Zoom.
So we'll have you gone too?
Town as
So
well, so I was
will you be
hoping for
here?
Zoom.
Yeah,
So we'll have 3 council members here.
I'll be here.
So we'll have a quorum.
Okay.
We just won't have hey, Dale's gone. We'll pass anything we want.
Yeah.
Well, I thought you were gonna say, because Dennis and Jenny were gone.
Pass anything while we're gone.
That's why I'm here. Jack.
Yeah, I know. So Chris, you'll want to be to that one. This will be an interesting meeting. Right?
If he gets the facts right.
Can we, since my name is Murphy, can we like make it's St. Patrick's Day, you know? So
Hey,
we have
wow.
corned beef and cabbage or
That's
something.
right.
I'm
Yes.
Italian though, I'm not even Irish,
Yeah.
so.
Bring the green milk.
So is Zoom not going to happen, or it will happen?
We'll need to, Chuck, are you gone?
My goodness, where's
So-
your
Mike, are you here?
Great.
spring break?
Oh, dear.
So we'll need somebody who can run Zoom and YouTube, because Kate is gone as well. So Tom,
Everybody listen to Dennis.
possibly,
Mayor?
or Marty.
Mayor and Dale, should we consider moving the meeting to the 4th Thursday in March?
The only reason that's not a bad idea is there's a fifth
Oh.
Thursday this month.
And it
We
is
could do
spring
that.
break. That's why people are gone.
Yeah.
We should have maybe noted that at the start of the year when we voted on that, but
I think that's a good idea.
I believe I'll be gone at that time. What date is that?
it would be the
The fourth one, the
24th.
24th.
Yeah, I'll be gone. It's birthday.
You may
You
70.
can join on Zoom, right?
I can.
I don't know. It's an idea.
Dale, you would be back.
I would be back for the 4th Thursday.
So can we notice it as an electronic meeting and involve Mike by phone? Would that be possible? Even if we don't have Zoom working?
We can, yes.
Because you're going to have a lot of information that's going to be important for this continuation of this discussion.
Yeah,
it's
and
his
I'll send
birthday.
information well ahead of time, but yeah, I'd like to attend the meeting.
Okay, let's make sure that works. Is everybody okay moving it to the 24th otherwise? Could I have a motion to that effect?
Yeah, only if it's his birthday, we don't want to have him having to sit up and talk to us on the phone. Is it your birthday on that night, or are you just traveling?
Yeah,
on
that's
that?
what
Just traveling. It's,
Okay, then.
my
we're-
wife and I, our birthdays are 4 days apart, so
Okay.
we always take off.
All right, then I move that we move the March 17th meeting to March 24th.
Second?
Second.
Moved and seconded that we move our March 17th meeting to March 24th. All in favor?
Aye.
Done. Items to be placed on future agendas. I only have one that I'm going to ask about. We had the presentation on Utopia. We now have probably the majority of the results on our survey that we had on our website back. Does the council desire to have a Utopia representative come and talk to us specifically about Ivins? Would that be something you're interested in?
I think so.
I think we,
Have you?
We need
So
more
could we-
information.
Yeah, we need more information.
Could we get that on an agenda at such a time that we can have, what's his name? Is it Jerry?
No, that was from Santa Clara.
No, this is the Utopia. I've met him 100 times and can't remember his name. But anyway, we'll need to do this at a time when we can make sure he can be here with us. That would be the point of it. Yes.
Clarify on that, one of the, and it's probably been stated, is there a competitor with
That's
Utopia?
boy, great minds.
Yes, great minds do
She
think
just
like,
said
thanks,
that.
Adele.
I just said that.
The answer is
It's been on my mind for 2 weeks, I've been wondering.
every every internet service provider will tell you they are a competitor. There is not another entity like this that is sort of quasi-governmental. There's not another entity that I know of out there, but there are commercial entities that will come and say, we do the same thing. But I've not found one that takes the bonding on themselves, designs the project, puts it in, and all we are is a backstop. I haven't found that yet. You're welcome to research, because in all fairness, we'd want to open it up to anybody who said they were a legitimate competitor, right?
Right.
Well, Mayor, I'm thinking that maybe it's not that they can do exactly what Utopia does, but it helps give us an idea what they're willing to do, what they're doing for our community. Because it will help us decide, hey, do we,
This is a
when that guy
steal.
says $12 million, I'm not gonna spend $12 million for 27 years in the future.
Exactly.
It changes too fast. But if we had a better, when I deal with things, it's how many lineal feet are we getting for the $12 million? So, if we just had ideas.
I'll tell you what, if we had Utopia's presentation, you would at least know.
Yeah, no, I will.
Because this is the entity that the other communities, St. George is looking seriously at that, so is Washington City, and Santa Clara has already taken the plunge. So at least if we got a background in that, then you could do whatever research you wished on other competitors before we signed any kind of a contract.
Okay.
Okay? Others? No need for a closed meeting?
I move.
The sweetest words of the night are?
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Anybody,
Dennis.
do I have a nay vote out there? Thank you. We stand adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Well, where are you going in 3 weeks?
Yeah, next time.
3 weeks then, right?
Yep.
That was a better idea. There's not a lot of people here.
We went there.
I like that idea too.
I will tell you, Disney World for 4 days is enough to kill a grandpa.
Were you there? Did you just?
We had our whole family, there was 27 of us.
Oh, my gosh.
All the grandkids and kids and,
Oh, wow.
and I walked myself, honestly, exhaustion.
All you do is walk to a line, stand in line, then figure out it's time to go eat, and they gotta use the bathroom, and that's all you do.
At least we were smart enough to jump from Disney World onto a Disney cruise for 3 days.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that was
That
nice
worked
then.
well.
See, we went to
Nice.
Florida to the Builder Show, and then we went to Magic Kingdom for 1 day. Biggest wasted. The little girls loved it, but they don't know not to love it.
That's right.
Mayor, where's the bathroom down here?
Right here.
There is one right through that
Don't
door.
lock me in, I gotta go.
Am I leaving my phone? Oh, there it is.
Well, good work, team. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mike, for your consistent great work for us. Oh, my goodness. See if I can stand up straight here.